So hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story of, what if Izuku was a Gojo and Saturo was a Midoriya? Or should we say, what if Izuku was born into the Gojo family and Saturo was born into the Midoriya family? And I am 100% sure you guys will love this fanfic. But before we start, I have a request to all of you. As you guys can see, we are very close to reaching 1000 subscribers. So please subscribe to our channel. I really need your support. Now let's start the story. How Saturo was reborn in the Midoriya family. Prologue. Struggling to pierce the haze that enveloped his vision, he sought the figure at his side, a presence both comforting and indistinct. The world before him was a blur, a watercolor wash where forms and light merged into obscurity. Sukuna's wrath had cleaved him asunder, a fate that should have spelled his end. Yet, here he lingered, teetering on the precipice between life and oblivion. Was Shoko's healing touch the thread by which he clung to this world? His limbs were distant memories, unresponsive. Satoru Gojo, the revered master of the reversed curse technique, now faced the ultimate defeat. Pride had always been his mantle, the unshakable belief in his unmatched strength. But perhaps, it was a mere illusion. True, Sukuna had enlisted Mahoraga, but still. A weary sigh escaped him, not in breath but in thought. His trust lay with his comrades, their victory against the king of curses was within reach. His faith was unyielding, particularly in Yuta, Yuji, Hikari and Naruto. Naruto, the prodigy who eclipsed them all. In mere months, he wielded infinity with a finesse that outshone Satoru's own. His arsenal brimmed with techniques Rasengan, clones, transformation, mastery over the elements. His prowess in speed, strength and intellect surpassed all Satoru had mentored. The boy, a mere 6 years of age, had even perfected the Black Flash. His domain expansion was unparalleled in its versatility and power. It was astounding. Satoru harbored no doubt they would prevail. They would dismantle Kinjaku's dark designs. With such formidable allies, Sukuna's downfall was inevitable. Oh, how he yearned to join their triumphant chorus, to revel in the aftermath of their hard-won battle. His heart ached for a glimpse of Megumi. A solitary tear traced its path down his cheek. Oh, the irony. Satoru Gojo, hailed as the mightiest sorcerer of his time, now reduced to tears. There, a voice, soft and feminine, reached him through the fog. Is she mocking me? A wry chuckle echoed within his mind. Don't cry, baby, the voice coaxed again. Mama is here. Had he the strength, he might have lashed out in defiance. To jest at death's door, what cruelty. Kind lady, spare me your taunts. Grant me solace in my final moments. There, the voice persisted. Ma'am, another voice interjected, youthful and tinged with concern. It is time for you to rest. You have been awake for quite some time now. The younger voice, laced with a hint of authority, seemed to cut through the haze that clouded his senses. Please, let him have this moment, she implored, her words carrying the weight of empathy and understanding. The room fell silent, save for the steady beeping of machines and the distant hum of life beyond these walls. In this quiet, Satoru found a strange comfort, a respite from the chaos that had defined his existence. He could sense them now, his comrades, their spirits intertwined with his own. They were out there, fighting battles he could no longer join, yet he felt no envy, only pride. Their strength was his legacy, their courage a testament to the bonds they shared. As the darkness beckoned, Satoru Gojo, the indomitable force of the Jujutsu world, allowed himself a final indulgence, a memory of days filled with laughter, challenges overcome, and the faces of those he cherished. And in that fleeting moment, he was at peace. The surprising thing was he didn't feel cold. He felt warm. It was a nice feeling. He was going to heaven. God was pleased with him. Good. At least he could meet everyone there sooner or later once he reached there. So this is the end. He thought. The end of not so honored one. I was born alone, now I am dying alone. I think it's time I officially announce. Throughout the heavens and earth, I alone am not the honored one. He soon drifted into darkness. In a world where the extraordinary had become the ordinary, where the once fantastical was now the everyday, a woman with hair like the verdant depths of an ancient forest tenderly pressed her lips to the soft, unblemished forehead of her newborn. The age of quirks had ushered in an era of acceptance for the diverse and the peculiar, yet amidst this tapestry of the unique, her child stood out as a beacon of singularity. He was a vision of serenity, his aura a tranquil melody that soothed the soul. His breaths, a symphony of life's rhythm, whispered promises of a harmonious future. The boy bore her visage, her emerald tresses, and even the constellation of freckles that danced across his cheeks like delicate brushstrokes. He was the epitome of endearment, a stark contrast to Hiashi, his father. Her heart swelled with love as she gazed upon him, but as his eyes fluttered open, a gasp of wonder escaped her. His eyes were not mirrors of her own, they were windows to a vibrant soul. Not green, but the lustrous jade of dawn's first light, gleaming with untold potential. She had thought to name him Izuku, yet as she looked upon him, the name felt like a garment ill-fitted for a king. Unbidden, a different name flowed from her lips, Satoru, a name that echoed with the promise of enlightenment. "Welcome to the realm of heroes, Satoru Midoriya," she whispered, her fingers gently tracing the contours of his face. "You are destined for greatness beyond measure." The infant met her gaze, and in the simplicity of his yawn, there lay a charm that transcended words. Unbeknownst to Inko Midoriya, this moment was a fulcrum upon which history would pivot. "So, this is the tale of Satoru Midoriya in My Hero Academia. Basically, this is calm before a storm. Now, we will come to see bundles of shocks and surprises. I hope you guys are ready. Let's start with chapter 1. Encounter. I'm here. Oh, it's All Might. We're saved." Satoru Midoriya grinned as he played with his hero action figures, lost in his own little world of heroics. His mother's call broke his concentration. "Satoru, dinner time." "Humming in a minute," he replied, reluctantly tearing himself away from his toys. With his messy dark green hair and bright skin dotted with freckles, Satoru seemed like any other kid, but there was more to him than met the eye. While some mistook him for a blind boy due to the blindfold he always wore, Satoru's vision was actually far superior to that of a normal person. His eyes, always shining with intensity, provided his brain with an overload of data, often resulting in headaches. His remarkable abilities were attributed not to a quirk, but to genetic mutations, according to doctors. Entering the living room, Satoru still clutched one of his action figures, dressed in a dim green t-shirt and three-quarter pants. His mother, busy with the dishes, instructed him to sit down, and he complied without much enthusiasm. As they sat down to eat, his mother brought up the topic of his first day of school, prompting Satoru to boast about his confidence. "First day of school," his mother said, smiling warmly. "Nervous?" "Nah, I'm the best," Satoru replied, puffing out his chest. Inko, his mother, couldn't help but sigh at her son's growing sense of superiority, a result of his newfound attraction and repulsion quirk. "Make some friends, okay?" she said, concern evident in her voice. "With an attitude like yours, you're going to end up all alone." He shrugged, not fully grasping her worry. "Was that Dad who called last night?" Satoru asked, changing the subject. "Yeah," his mother replied, setting the table. "So when is he coming back?" "Next summer, I think." "Did you tell him to bring me?" "Yep, he will bring sweets." "Sweet." After finishing their meal, Inko bundled up in her coat and grabbed Satoru's bag as they headed out to the preschool. Together, they hailed a cab and made their way to the preschool, a renowned institution in Mustafa where even Bakugo, a familiar face, attended. As they rode, Satoru's excitement bubbled over. "I can't wait to see all the hero stuff they have at school," he exclaimed, his eyes shining with anticipation. Inko smiled, hoping that school would provide him with opportunities to make friends and learn to be more humble. "Just remember to be yourself, Satoru," she said, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "And try not to cause too much trouble." Satoru Midoriya was excited as he walked into the preschool classroom. It was his first day of school, and he was confident that he would make a good impression on everyone. He knew he had a great quirk. Attract and repulse. He could manipulate the forces of attraction and repulsion between objects and himself. He could make things fly towards him or away from him with a flick of his finger. He could also use his quirk on himself to jump high or glide in the air. Satoru entered the classroom and looked around. He saw a bunch of kids playing with toys, drawing, or reading books. Some of them had visible quirks, like horns, tails, or wings. Others had quirks that were not obvious, like invisibility, telepathy, or fire. Satoru wondered what kind of quirks they had and if they would be amazed by his quirk. He spotted a seat next to a boy with spiky blonde hair and red eyes. He was playing with a toy car. Satoru decided to sit next to him. He walked over to the seat and said hello. "Hi, I'm Satoru. What's your name?" he asked. The boy looked up from his toy and scowled. "I'm Bakugo. And I don't care who you are," he said. Satoru felt a surge of annoyance. He didn't like his attitude. Maybe he could teach him a lesson. "What are you playing with?" he asked. "It's a toy car. And it's none of your business." "Go away," Bakugo said. Satoru smirked. He had an idea. He used his quirk to make the toy car fly away from Bakugo and towards himself. He caught it in his hand and said, "Now it's mine." Bakugo was shocked and angry. He shouted, "Hey, give that back. That's my toy." "How did you do that?" Satoru laughed. He said, "I did it with my quirk. It's called attract and repulse. I can make things come to me or go away from me. It's awesome, right?" Bakugo was not impressed. He said, "That's a lame quirk. Mine is better. It's called explosion. I can make things explode with my palms. Watch this." Bakugo activated his quirk and made a small explosion in his hand. He threw it at Satoru, hoping to hit him and his toy car. Satoru was not scared. He said, "That's nothing. I can dodge that easily." Satoru used his quirk to repel himself from the explosion in the seat. He flew up in the air and said, "See? I can fly too." Bakugo was furious. He said, "You think you're so cool, huh? Well, you're not. You're just a show-off. I'll make you pay for stealing my toy." Bakugo jumped up from his seat and chased after Satoru. He tried to grab him and his toy car, but Satoru kept repelling him and attracting other objects to block him. He said, "You can't catch me. I'm too fast and smart for you." The other kids in the classroom watched the scene with curiosity and awe. They had never seen such a quirk battle before. They wondered who would win and what would happen next. The teacher, who was in the other room, heard the commotion and came to see what was going on. She was shocked and angry to see Satoru and Bakugo fighting in the air, throwing objects and explosions at each other. She yelled, "Stop it right now. Both of you. What are you doing? This is not a playground. This is a classroom. You're supposed to be learning, not fighting." Satoru and Bakugo ignored her. They were too busy trying to beat each other. They didn't care about the teacher, the rules, or the consequences. They only cared about their quirks, their pride, and their fun. The teacher decided to intervene. She used her quirk, which was called Calm. She could emit a soothing aura that would calm down anyone who felt it. She hoped to stop the fight between Satoru and Bakugo and make them listen to reason. She activated her quirk and spread her calm aura over the classroom. She said, "Please, calm down. Fighting is not the answer. You need to talk to each other and resolve your differences peacefully." The other kids in the classroom felt the effect of her quirk. They stopped playing, drawing, or reading, and looked at the teacher with calm and curious eyes. They wondered what she was going to do next. Satoru and Bakugo also felt the effect of her quirk. They felt their anger and excitement fade away and their adrenaline drop. They slowed down their movements and lowered their voices. They looked at the teacher with calm and confused eyes. They wondered why they were fighting in the first place. The teacher saw that her quirk was working. She said, "Thank you for calming down. Now, please, come down from the air and sit in your seats. We need to talk about what happened." Satoru and Bakugo obeyed. They used their quirks to land safely on the ground. They returned the toy car and the other objects to their original places. They walked back to their seats and sat down. They looked at the teacher with calm and guilty eyes. They wondered what she was going to say. The teacher said, "Now, can you tell me why you were fighting? What started this whole mess?" Satoru and Bakugo looked at each other. They didn't have a good answer. They realized that they were fighting over nothing. They felt ashamed of themselves. Satoru said, "I'm sorry, teacher. It was my fault. I took his toy car with my quirk. I wanted to show off. I didn't mean to make him angry." Bakugo said, "I'm sorry, teacher. It was my fault. I threw an explosion at him with my quirk. I wanted to get back at him. I didn't mean to hurt him." The teacher said, "I appreciate your honesty and apology. But you both made a big mistake. You used your quirks irresponsibly and recklessly. You endangered yourselves and others. You disrupted the class and the learning environment. You broke the rules and the trust. Do you understand how serious this is?" Satoru and Bakugo nodded. They understood. They felt sorry for what they did. The teacher said, "Your quirks are gifts, not weapons. You should use them for good, not evil. You should respect them, not abuse them. You should control them, not let them control you. Do you understand?" Satoru and Bakugo nodded. They understood. They felt grateful for what they had. The teacher said, "Your quirks are also part of who you are, not all of who you are. You should be proud of them, not arrogant. You should be humble of them, not boastful. You should be curious of them, not ignorant. Do you understand?" Satoru and Bakugo nodded. They understood. They felt curious about what they could do. The teacher said, "Your quirks are also not the only thing that matters, not the only thing that defines you. You should also care about your personality, your character, your values, your goals, your dreams, your friends, your family, your society, your world. Do you understand?" Satoru and Bakugo nodded. They understood. They felt inspired by what they could be. The teacher said, "I'm glad you understand. I hope you learned your lesson. I hope you will never fight again. I hope you will become friends. I hope you will become heroes. Do you promise?" Satoru and Bakugo looked at each other. They saw a new respect and understanding in each other's eyes. They smiled and nodded. They promised. The teacher smiled and nodded. She was proud of them. She said, "Good. Now, let's move on. It's time for some snacks. Who wants some cookies?" The other kids in the classroom cheered and clapped. They wanted some cookies. They also wanted to talk to Satoru and Bakugo and learn more about their quirks. They hoped they would become friends too. Satoru and Bakugo joined the other kids. They shared some cookies and some stories. They laughed and played. They had fun. They forgot about their fight. They remembered their promise. They became friends. It was good news for them but bad news for some other people. In the cozy confines of Musatafu Preschool, laughter echoed through the halls as mischief brewed in the minds of two young boys, Satoru Midoriya and Kitsuki Bakugo. Little did the caretakers know that they were in for quite the day when these two troublemakers were around. Satoru, with his bright eyes and infectious grin, was the picture of innocence. Bakugo, his fiery-haired partner in crime, was always ready to push the boundaries. The morning began like any other preschool day, with kids playing, painting, and learning. However, Satoru and Bakugo had other plans. As the unsuspecting caretakers turned their backs, the duo seized the opportunity to put their mischievous plans into action. Their first target: the snack cupboard. With stealth that belied their age, they snuck past the watchful eyes of the caretakers and managed to open the cupboard door. Giggling conspiratorially, they swapped the labels on the snack boxes, switching cookies with crackers and fruit juice with vegetable juice. Next on their agenda was the classic switcheroo game. Satoru and Bakugo swapped their clothes when no one was looking, causing quite the confusion among the caretakers when they returned from their break to find two little boys sporting each other's attire. But the piece de resistance of their pranks came during story time. As the caretaker settled the children down for a tale from a brightly illustrated picture book, Satoru and Bakugo slyly replaced the storybook with a picture-filled comic book from Bakugo's backpack. As the caretaker began reading from the comic book, unaware of the switch, the children erupted into fits of laughter, much to the confusion of the caretaker. During art class, while the caretaker was helping another child, Satoru and Bakugo decided to add their own creative flair to the paintings. With mischievous grins, they dipped their fingers into various paint colors and, when the caretaker wasn't looking, added splashes of unexpected colors to each other's artwork. The result was a collection of abstract masterpieces that left the caretaker bemused and the children delighted. During outdoor playtime, Satoru and Bakugo convinced the other children to join them in a game of hide and seek. However, they had a twist in mind. While the caretaker counted to 10, Satoru and Bakugo quietly slipped away to hide in the caretaker's office, leaving the rest of the children searching fruitlessly. When the caretaker finally discovered their hiding spot, they were greeted with uproarious laughter from the mischievous duo. During a nature walk in the preschool garden, Satoru and Bakugo decided to liven things up by impersonating various animals. With impressive vocal talents, they mimicked the sounds of birds, monkeys, and even lions, much to the amazement of their classmates and the bewilderment of the caretakers. Their antics turned an ordinary stroll into a memorable safari adventure. These additional pranks added an extra layer of excitement and laughter to Satoru and Bakugo's preschool escapades. Their boundless energy and creativity kept their caretakers on their toes while creating lasting memories for everyone involved. Throughout the day, Satoru and Bakugo's antics continued, bringing joy and laughter to their preschool, but also keeping the caretakers on their toes. Despite the chaos they caused, there was an undeniable charm to their friendship and the way they brightened up each other's days with their playful spirits. As the sun began to set on Musatafu Preschool, Satoru and Bakugo bid farewell to their eventful day of pranks and playdates, already plotting their next adventure. Little did anyone know, this dynamic duo was just getting started on a lifetime of mischief and camaraderie. Back in Midoriya household, Inko smiled warmly at her son as they sat down for dinner, a sense of anticipation lingering in the air. "So, Satoru," she began, "how was your first day at preschool?" Satoru's eyes lit up with excitement as he dove into his tale. "Mom, it was incredible. You won't believe the fun I had," he exclaimed. Inko leaned in, eager to hear all about her son's adventures. "Well, first off, I met this kid named Bakugo. He's like a human firecracker, always full of energy and ready for action. We ended up teaming up for everything." Inko chuckled at the mention of Bakugo, knowing her son had found a spirited companion. "And then," Satoru continued, his voice brimming with excitement, "we pulled off some epic pranks. Like switching the labels on the snack boxes so everyone got a surprise at snack time. Oh, and we swapped clothes when no one was looking." The caretakers were so confused. Inko couldn't help but laugh at her son's mischievous antics. "Sounds like you had quite the day, Satoru," she remarked, shaking her head fondly. "Oh, but it gets better," Satoru exclaimed, his eyes sparkling with mischief. During story time, Bakugo and I swapped the storybook with a comic book from his backpack. The look on the teacher's face was priceless. Inko couldn't contain her amusement at her son's tales of preschool mischief. "You and Bakugo make quite the pair," she said, ruffling his hair affectionately. Satoru grinned proudly, feeling a sense of accomplishment at regaling his mother with his preschool escapades. "Yeah, we sure do. And tomorrow, we're planning even more pranks." As mother and son shared a laugh, Inko couldn't help but marvel at the bond between Satoru and Bakugo. And as she listened to her son's animated storytelling, she knew that his first day of preschool was just the beginning of many more adventures to come. Satoru gave his mom a goodnight kiss before going into his bedroom. In the cozy confines of his room, Satoru sat transfixed before the glow of his computer screen, his eyes glued to the latest footage of All Might in action. The iconic hero, with his towering stature and indomitable spirit, never failed to captivate Satoru's imagination. As the video played, showcasing All Might's heroic feats and daring rescues, Satoru's admiration swelled within him. With each display of strength and courage, he felt a surge of inspiration coursing through his veins. "Wow," Satoru murmured, his voice tinged with awe. "All Might truly is amazing." From rescuing civilians trapped in burning buildings to thwarting villainous plots with effortless ease, All Might embodied everything Satoru aspired to be. His unwavering commitment to justice and unwavering resolve served as a beacon of hope in a world plagued by darkness. As the footage continued to roll, Satoru couldn't tear his eyes away, drinking in every heroic moment with rapt attention. In that electrifying display of bravery, he found a glimmer of hope, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, heroes could rise to the occasion and make a difference. With the newfound determination burning within him, Satoru made a silent vow to follow in All Might's footsteps, to become a hero worthy of admiration and respect. And as he watched a legendary hero save lives and inspire hope, he knew that his journey had only just begun. In the dimly lit chamber of their hidden lair, the notorious villain All For One stood before his young protege, Tamura Shigaraki. The air crackled with anticipation as the master prepared to impart his dark wisdom upon his apprentice. Tamura, All For One's voice echoed with authority, "It is time to hone your skills, to unleash the true potential that lies within you." Tamura, his eyes burning with a mixture of determination and apprehension, nodded silently, eager to prove himself to his mentor. "All For One," he replied, his voice tinged with reverence, "I am ready to learn." With a sinister smile, All For One gestured towards a series of targets lining the far wall. "Your task is simple, yet crucial. Destroy these targets with precision and efficiency. Show me the extent of your power." Tamura clenched his fists, channeling his inner turmoil into raw energy. With a primal scream, he unleashed his quirk, causing the very ground to tremble beneath him. As his power surged forth, the targets shattered into pieces, crumbling under the force of his destructive abilities. All For One observed with a mixture of pride and amusement. "Impressive, Tamura. But raw power alone will not suffice. You must learn to control your abilities with finesse, to strike fear into the hearts of our enemies." Under the watchful eye of his mentor, Tamura continued to train tirelessly, honing his skills and mastering new techniques. With each passing day, he grew stronger, more formidable, a true disciple of darkness. And as the shadows deepened around them, All For One knew that the day would soon come when his protege would stand by his side, ready to unleash chaos upon the world. The doctors defined Satoru's ability as a quirk to attract or repulse objects. While it may not have been flashy, it possessed enough strength to qualify him as a potential hero. However, soon their perception of him underwent a remarkable shift when, at the tender age of 3, Satoru revealed his own unique quirk. Telekinesis. This ability wasn't entirely surprising, considering his mother also possessed telekinetic powers. What set Satoru apart, however, was the unprecedented nature of his manifestation. Unlike others who exhibited common symptoms of quirk emergence, Satoru's abilities were deemed a unique case by experts. Satoru's telekinetic prowess far surpassed his mother's capabilities. He demonstrated the ability to attract and repulse objects of any size or weight, showcasing remarkable control over his abilities from a young age. Within just 2 months of his quirk emerging, he could levitate himself 3 feet above the ground. With time, his mastery grew, and within a year, he could soar to heights exceeding 100 meters. At the age of 4, a mere 4 months ago, an extraordinary incident occurred. While returning home from shopping with his mother, they were caught in a sudden downpour. Stranded in the middle of the road with no shelter in sight, they faced imminent drenching. Yet, to their astonishment, not a single raindrop touched them. An invisible barrier formed around them, shielding them from the rain, an ability that surpassed mere telekinesis. His mother, witnessing this miraculous display, understood the extent of Satoru's potential. With a mere gesture, he dispersed the clouds, halting the rain in its tracks. This astonishing feat went unnoticed by others, concealed from prying eyes. But that was not all. Her son looked at the people around them. They were running here and there in desperation, they were getting wet. He raised his right hand towards the heavens. "Scatter." It was all he said before it happened. Her eyes were almost on the verge of popping out when Inko looked up. The clouds moved away from one another instantly. Soon the black clouds were turned into white steam, and soon they were completely gone. At precisely 12:30 p.m. on July 2, year 2XXX, a peculiar weather event unfolded, as documented in a report by Paranormal Events Japan. Rainfall commenced abruptly, lasting for a mere minute before an extraordinary phenomenon ensued. Instead of the usual gradual dispersal, the clouds vanished entirely, withholding their remaining water. It was as if they evaporated into thin air, leaving behind a mystifying spectacle that defied conventional meteorological explanations. Fortunately, nobody saw him doing it. The doctors kept a tight lid on this information, dubbing it infinity. Why? Because Satoru's potential seemed boundless. Truly, it was an extraordinary quirk. Despite his powerful abilities, Satoru remained a cheerful and somewhat immature child, a fact his mother often remarked upon. She believed that being too smart might rob him of his childhood innocence. However, Satoru grappled with a troubling issue. Whenever he slept, he found himself in the company of a mysterious man with white hair and piercing blue eyes. This man was always accompanied by a diverse cast of characters. A boy with pink hair, a girl with brown locks, even a panda, and many others. Their interactions, though strange, filled Satoru with a sense of warmth and happiness. Yet, amidst these comforting dreams lurked a darker reality. Satoru often found himself plagued by nightmares, where he witnessed the gruesome demise of the white-haired man and his companions at the hands of monstrous beings. One particularly terrifying entity, with 4 arms and 4 eyes, seemed to lead the charge, accompanied by a grotesque creature with a spinning wheel atop its head. Despite seeking help from doctors, the nightmares persisted, offering no respite from the harrowing visions. Satoru clung to optimism, hoping that one day, the nightmares would cease, as his mother assured him they would. They never did. Satoru Midoriya was a happy and energetic 9-year-old boy. He loved his mom, Inko, more than anything in the world. She was always kind, caring, and supportive of him. She always encouraged him to pursue his dreams. Satoru's dream was to become a hero, just like his idol, All Might. He admired All Might's strength, courage, and charisma. He wanted to save people with a smile and make the world a better place. He had a collection of All Might merchandise, including posters, figurines, comics, and DVDs. He watched All Might's videos every day and practiced his poses and catchphrases in front of the mirror. He was 9 years old when everything changed for him. One sunny morning, Inko decided to take Satoru shopping for some new clothes. She noticed that he had outgrown most of his old ones and wanted to reward him for his good grades at school. She also wanted to spend some quality time with her son and make him happy. "Are you ready, Satoru?" Inko asked as she put on her coat and scarf. "Yes, Mom," Satoru replied as he grabbed his backpack and All Might mask. "Let's go." They walked to the nearest bus stop and waited for the bus to arrive. Satoru was excited to go shopping with his mom. He wondered what kind of clothes he would find and hoped that they would have some All Might themed ones. "Mom, can we go to the hero store too?" Satoru asked as he looked at his mom with hopeful eyes. "Sure, honey. We can go there after we buy some clothes. Maybe they have some new All Might stuff that you don't have yet," Inko said, smiling. "Yay. Thank you, Mom. You're the best," Satoru said, hugging his mom. Inko hugged him back and felt a warm feeling in her chest. She loved her son so much and wanted to make him happy. The bus arrived and they boarded it. They found 2 seats near the window and sat down. Satoru looked out the window and saw the city passing by. He saw people walking on the sidewalks, cars driving on the roads, and buildings towering over the sky. He also saw some heroes patrolling the streets and some villains being arrested by the police. He felt a surge of admiration and excitement. He wanted to be part of that world and make a difference. "Mom, look. It's Kamui Woods," Satoru exclaimed as he pointed at a hero who was using his wooden limbs to capture a thief. "Wow, he's amazing," Inko said as she watched the scene. "He's one of the rising stars of the hero world. He's very popular among the kids. I like him too. He's cool and strong. But not as cool and strong as All Might. He's the #1 hero and the symbol of peace. He is my hero," Satoru said as he put on his All Might mask and struck a pose. Inko chuckled and ruffled his hair. "You're so cute, Satoru. You look just like him." "Really? Thanks, Mom. That's the best compliment ever," Satoru said, beaming. They continued to chat and laugh as they enjoyed the bus ride. They arrived at the shopping mall and got off the bus. They entered the mall and headed to the clothing store. They browsed through the racks and picked some clothes that they liked. Inko helped Satoru try on some shirts, pants, and jackets. She made sure that they fit him well and that they matched his style. "Mom, how about this one?" Satoru asked as he showed her a blue hoodie with a yellow star on the chest. "It's very nice, Satoru. It suits you well. And it's your favorite color, right?" Inko said as she nodded. "Yes, it is. It's the same color as All Might's costume. Do you think he would like it?" Satoru asked as he looked at his mom with eager eyes. "I'm sure he would, honey. He would be proud of you," Inko said as she smiled. "Then I'll take it. It's my new favorite hoodie," Satoru said as he hugged the hoodie. They bought the hoodie along with some other clothes. They paid at the cashier and put the clothes in a bag. They thanked the clerk and left the store. They walked to the hero store, which was on the other side of the mall. They saw a large sign that said, Hero World, and a display window that showed various hero merchandise. They saw posters, books, games, toys, costumes, and accessories. They also saw a large screen that showed a video of All Might's latest feat. Wow, look at that, Mom. It's All Might. He's fighting a giant robot. Satoru exclaimed as he ran to the window. Inko followed him and saw the video. She saw All Might punching the robot with his fist and sending it flying. She saw him smiling and waving to the crowd and saying his catchphrase. I am here. He's amazing, isn't he? Inko said as she watched the. They entered the hero store and Satoru's eyes widened in awe. He saw all kinds of hero merchandise, from action figures and posters to costumes and gadgets. He felt like a kid in a candy store and wanted to buy everything. Wow, Mom, look at all this stuff. It's so cool. Satoru exclaimed as he ran around the store. Inko smiled and followed him. She was happy to see him so excited and wanted to indulge him. She knew that he loved heroes and that he had a special quirk that made him different from others. Satoru's quirk was very rare and powerful and had a lot of potential. He dreamed of using it to become a hero and help people in need. He also hoped to meet All Might someday and show him his quirk. He wondered if All Might would be impressed by him and maybe even train him. Satoru found an All Might action figure and picked it up. He pressed a button and the figure said, "You can become a hero." Satoru smiled and felt inspired. He put the figure close to his chest and said, "Yes, I can." He looked at his mom and said, "Mom, can I have this, please?" Inko nodded and said, "Of course, honey. You can have anything you want." She took the figure from him and put it in a basket. She also added some other items that Satoru liked, such as an All Might t-shirt, a hero encyclopedia, and a pair of goggles. "Thank you, Mom. You're the best," Satoru said as he hugged his mom. Inko hugged him back and said, "You're welcome, Satoru. You're the best, too." They continued to shop and bought some more things. They paid at the cashier and left the store. They walked to the exit of the mall and decided to take a taxi home. They hailed a taxi and got in. They put their bags in the trunk and sat in the back seat. Satoru looked out the window and saw the city lights. He felt happy and content. "Mom, I had so much fun today. Thank you for taking me shopping," Satoru said as he looked at his mom. Inko smiled and said, "I had fun, too, Satoru. Thank you for being such a good son." They exchanged a loving look and held hands. They felt a strong bond between them and nothing could break it. The taxi driver started the engine and drove away. He turned on the radio and a news report came on. Breaking news. A massive explosion has occurred at the Tokyo Bay, causing a huge fire and smoke. The cause of the explosion is unknown, but witnesses say that they saw a flying object crash into the water. The authorities are investigating the scene and have requested the assistance of heroes. All Might, the #1 hero, has arrived at the scene and is trying to contain the fire and rescue the victims. We will keep you updated on this developing story. Satoru and Inko gasped and turned their attention to the radio. They felt a surge of shock and worry. They wondered what had happened and who was responsible. Just when he was about to say what it was, he felt the world suddenly get cold and the taxi being thrown away into a nearby mall, and the last thing he saw before losing consciousness was a suited man standing on the fallen body of All Might. In the heart of the bustling city, amidst the vibrant atmosphere of a crowded mall, an ominous presence stirred. All for One, the sinister mastermind behind countless acts of villainy, had chosen this unlikely battleground for his long-awaited confrontation with his greatest nemesis All Might, the symbol of peace. As unsuspecting shoppers bustled about their business, a sudden chill filled the air, sending shivers down their spines. Sensing the impending clash, they fled in panic, leaving the once lively mall eerily deserted save for the two titans poised for battle. All Might, his towering figure a beacon of strength and righteousness, stood resolute at one end of the mall, his piercing gaze locked on his adversary. Across from him, All for One, shrouded in darkness and malice, grinned with sinister anticipation. "Ah, All Might," All for One's voice echoed through the empty corridors with chilling clarity. "How delightful to see you again. Shall we resume our dance of destruction?" All Might's response was a steely glare, his muscles tensed in preparation for the inevitable clash. With a thunderous roar, he launched himself forward, closing the distance between them in the blink of an eye. His fist, wreathed in crackling energy, surged towards All for One with unstoppable force. But the villain, ever cunning, met the attack head-on, his own formidable power erupting to meet All Might's blow. The impact sent shockwaves rippling through the mall, shattering windows and sending debris flying in all directions. As the dust settled, the two adversaries stood locked in a fierce stalemate, their powers clashing with titanic force. Each blow they exchanged threatened to tear the very fabric of reality asunder, the sheer magnitude of their strength shaking the foundations of the mall to its core. But the savage grin, All For One unleashed a barrage of devastating attacks, each strike aimed to overwhelm his opponent. Yet All Might, undeterred, stood firm against the onslaught, his unwavering resolve serving as a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. The battle raged on, a symphony of destruction echoing through the empty corridors of the mall. With every passing moment, the stakes grew higher, the fate of the city hanging in the balance, as these two unstoppable forces clashed with unbridled fury. But as the confrontation reached its zenith, a sudden realization dawned upon All Might. All For One was not fighting to win, but to cause chaos, to kill. With a sinking feeling in his heart, he turned to see the true extent of his adversary's scheme unfolding before his eyes. As the epic battle between All Might and All For One continued to rage within the confines of the mall, a sense of dread settled over the hero's heart. For amidst the chaos and destruction, he realized the true purpose behind his adversary's machinations to sow discord and chaos while executing a sinister plan unbeknownst to him. With a surge of determination, All Might pushed himself to his limits, redoubling his efforts to thwart All For One's nefarious scheme. His muscles bulged with newfound strength as he launched himself into a flurry of attacks, each blow aimed at subduing his formidable foe. But All For One, ever the puppet master, danced effortlessly out of harm's way, his malevolent grin widening with each passing moment. With a wave of his hand, he summoned forth a horde of villainous minions, their twisted forms emerging from the shadows to join the fray. All Might fought valiantly against the tide of darkness, his fists a blur of motion as he laid waste to his adversaries with righteous fury. Yet for every villain he defeated, two more seemed to take their place, their numbers overwhelming even his legendary prowess. With each passing moment, the mall became a battleground of chaos and destruction, the very essence of heroism tested to its limits. All Might's heart ached as he witnessed the innocent bystanders caught in the crossfire, their lives hanging in the balance as the battle raged on. But even amidst the chaos, All Might remained resolute, his unwavering resolve serving as a beacon of hope amidst the darkness. With a mighty roar, he rallied his fellow heroes to his side, their combined strength bolstering his own as they fought to protect the innocent and uphold the ideals of justice. Yet even as they pushed back against the tide of villainy, All For One's insidious plan continued to unfold. With a wicked grin, he revealed his ultimate trump card, a devastating weapon of mass destruction hidden within the heart of the mall, poised to unleash untold devastation upon the city. With time running out, All Might knew that he had to act swiftly to prevent catastrophe. With a mighty leap, he charged towards the heart of the mall, his fists blazing with righteous fury as he prepared to face his greatest challenge yet. Just like Nana taught him, clench your butt and shout. United States of Smash. All For One was crushed into the tiles of the mall, and he felt his whole head turn into paste. He needed to act. Fast. With the help of a brain quirk, he scanned his surroundings, no good, no hostage. He saw a yellow taxi. The driver was dead. But the passengers were very much alive. He could use them to escape. With a mighty yell, he pushed All Might from over him and jumped straight at the taxi. Without looking back at All Might, he torn off the door and pulled out an unconscious woman with green hair. She had a very weak telekinesis quirk. Her son was unconscious. He felt no quirk from the boy, useless. He looked at All Might, who had a horrified look on his face. Release her this instant. All Might yelled as he stood up but didn't approach. Tell those heroes to stand down. All For One said. All Might gritted his teeth, his smile was nowhere to be seen, and the heroes behind him and above them were waiting for All Might's signal to attack. But that would be too reckless. He needed to act. Fast. What happened? All For One taunted All Might. Do you wish for her to die, just like your master? All Might's face told him everything, a face that spoke of anger. Good. All For One raised her by holding her neck, he could feel her cervical vertebral discs cracking. Drop her. All Might yelled. Just do what I said, All For One said calmly. Or else, he kept the sentence unfinished. The other heroes were not making any move. It was All For One's turn to make the move. Just when he was about to throw the woman in a random direction, he felt a chilling a childish voice, they said. What do we have here? A new type of cursed spirit. Cursed energy user. Nah, you're just a punk who doesn't know his place. All For One turned his head and at the boy, he was grinning like a maniac. The boy wasn't supposed to have a quirk, then how did he release such killing intent? Move away, young man. All Might screamed, still breathing heavily, exhausted from his last attack. He is a villain. A villain? The boy's grin got wider. Maybe I should show him a real hero. The boy raised one of his hands and spoke in a clear yet confident voice. Curse technique. At precisely 5:31 p.m. on October 3, year 2XXX, All Might confronted a supervillain whose details are not disclosed. Nearly 300 people were injured and 73 civilians died. 4 heroes are severely injured and 2 are crippled for life. As documented in a report by the Hero Association Japan. All Might is critically injured and is currently being treated by a recovery girl in UA. The unnamed villain was nowhere to be found, and the association denied disclosing his whereabouts. However, an unconventional scene did indeed get viral on the social media platform. A video in which a boy no older than 10 was said to be using a very powerful quirk on the supervillain. Currently, the whereabouts of the boy and the woman is unknown. The room was silent except for the soft beeping of the heart monitor and the gentle whoosh of the ventilator. Midoriya lay motionless in the hospital bed, her forest green hair framing her pale face like a wild, untamed halo. It had been 5 years since the tragic day when she was caught in the crossfire between All for One and All Might, 5 years since her world had been turned upside down. Mitsuki Bakugo sat by her bedside, her gaze fixed on her friend's serene face. "Inko, you have to wake up," she whispered, her voice laced with a desperation she allowed no one else to see. "Satoru needs you, I need you." The doctors had said there was little hope, but Mitsuki refused to give up. She clung to the belief that Inko could hear her, that somewhere in the depths of her coma, she was fighting to come back. Mitsuki's thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of a nurse, who came to check Inko's vitals. "Any change?" Mitsuki asked, though she knew the answer. The nurse shook her head, her expression sympathetic. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Bakugo. She's stable, but there's been no improvement." Mitsuki nodded, her hands clenched into fists. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a murmur. As the nurse left, Mitsuki turned back to Inko, her eyes welling with tears. "Where are you, Satoru?" she thought, her heart aching for the boy who had vanished without a trace. "Your mother is here, waiting for you, and so am I." The room was filled with the silent prayers of a best friend, the unspoken hopes that Inko would awaken, that Satoru would be found, and that their shattered family would be whole once more. The hospital room, bathed in the soft glow of the evening sun, was a silent witness to the tableau of sorrow and hope. Mitsuki Bakugo's voice, gentle and unwavering, filled the space as she spoke to her comatose friend, Inko Midoriya. "You're not alone, Inko. We're all here for you. Satoru is out there, and we'll find him." In the corner stood Kitsuki Bakugo, his crimson eyes fixed on the scene before him. His mother's words were a balm to his own aching heart, but they couldn't quell the storm raging within him. Satoru, his childhood friend, had been missing for 5 years too long. "I'll find you, Satoru," Kitsuki thought, his fists clenching at his sides. "No matter where you are, no matter what it takes. I'll become the hero you always believed I could be." His resolve was a silent oath, a promise etched into the very fiber of his being. He remembered the days when he and Satoru would talk about the future, about being heroes together. Those memories were now the fuel that ignited his determination. Mitsuki turned to leave, her hand lingering on Inko's for a moment longer. "Kitsuki," she said softly, "it's time to go." Mitsuki nodded, his gaze never leaving Inko's face. "I'll be back, Auntie Inko," he whispered, though he knew she couldn't hear him. "And I'll bring Satoru with me." As they left the hospital room, the weight of their shared mission hung heavy in the air. Kitsuki Bakugo, the boy with the explosive power and fiery spirit, had a new goal. To reunite a family torn apart by tragedy and to fulfill a vow made in the quiet of a hospital room. In the bustling heart of the city, hidden beneath layers of strict rules and hidden agendas, lay a mysterious facility known only to a chosen few. Its walls, fortified with lead and soundproofing, seemed to hold within them the murmurs of what was yet to come, children possessing abilities so immense and unbridled that the world outside was deemed unprepared to witness them. The nursery's halls are silent, save for the soft hum of high-tech monitoring equipment. Here, children with extraordinary quirks, abilities so powerful they could shake the very foundations of the world, are kept under constant surveillance. In one of the rooms, a young boy named Kaido sits quietly, his eyes glowing faintly as he levitates small objects around him. He's unaware of the debates about his future, the ethical quandaries his mere existence poses to those who watch over him. The nursery, a fortress of order and discipline, is home to more than just Kaido. Each child here is a prodigy, their quirks a blend of wonder and danger. There's Hina, whose whispers can calm the fiercest storms, yet she sits silently, her voice unheard by the world outside. Across from her, Daichi's eyes can see through walls, through lies, but they're clouded with the weight of constant observation. Dr. Hikari's second in command, Dr. Yamada, is a stern figure who views the children as subjects first, individuals second. Emotions cloud judgment, he often says, his gaze fixed on the data that streams in 24/7. Nurse Aiko, known for her efficiency, administers tests with a mechanical precision. She never smiles at the children, her face is an unreadable mask. Attachment is a liability, she reminds her staff, we're here to monitor, not the mother. In a special containment room, there's Yudo, whose touch can alter reality. He's never known a mother's hug or a father's pat on the back, only the cold embrace of restraints designed to dampen his quirk. The staff move through their tasks with a clinical detachment, their reports devoid of adjectives, their conversations a string of numbers and observations. They believe in the mission of the nursery to control the uncontrollable, to harness the future's power. Yet, in the quiet moments, when the children's laughter pierces the sterile air, some staff members feel a twinge of something they dare not name. It's quickly buried under layers of protocol and professionalism, for in the nursery, there's no room for sentiment, only the relentless pursuit of stability in a world teetering on the brink of chaos. In the dimly lit confines of a hidden bar, a place untouched by the law and unseen by heroes, Tamura Shigaraki sat across from Kurogiri, his disfigured hands tapping an erratic rhythm on the table. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and darker secrets. "Kurogiri," Tamura began, his voice a low growl, "you know why we're here, don't you? It's all part of his plan." Kurogiri's misty form wavered slightly, the only sign of his acknowledgement. "Yes, Tamura. All for One has entrusted you with his legacy. His defeat by All Might was but a temporary setback." Tamura's lips curled into a semblance of a smile, a twisted expression that belied the chaos in his heart. "They think they've won, that they've saved society from his clutches. Fools, all of them." He leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with a dangerous light. "All for One is not just a man, he is an idea, a promise of a new order. And I am his chosen successor. His will is mine to enact." Kurogiri nodded, his voice steady as ever. "The heroes believe in a false peace, but you, Tamura, will be the harbinger of truth. The world will witness the power of his will through you." Tamura's fingers stopped their tapping, and he fixed Kurogiri with a piercing stare. "Tell me, Kurogiri, do you ever doubt the path we're on?" For a moment, there was silence, and then Kurogiri replied, "Doubt is a luxury we cannot afford. Our conviction must be absolute, for our cause is greater than any one of us." Tamura stood up, his presence filling the room like a dark cloud. "Then let us begin. The heroes are not prepared for what's to come. We will shatter their illusion of safety, and when the dust settles, it will be us who forge the world anew." Kurogiri's form shifted, ready to obey. "Where shall we start, Tamura?" A wicked grin spread across Tamura's face. "We start by sowing discord, by showing them that their heroes are nothing but fragile idols waiting to be toppled. We strike at the heart of their society, and we do it now." As they left the bar, the shadows seemed to whisper of the coming storm, a tempest that would test the very foundations of hero society. Tamura Shigaraki, the chosen heir of All for One, was ready to claim his destiny, and nothing would stand in his way. The hallowed halls of the nursery grew tense with anticipation as the legendary hero All Might arrived. His towering presence seemed to fill every corner of the facility, a beacon of hope and strength in a place shrouded in secrecy. Dr. Hikari, her face a mask of professionalism, greeted him with a firm handshake. "All Might, your visit honors us," she said, her voice betraying none of the nervousness that fluttered in her stomach. "Welcome, All Might," her words resonated faintly in the sterile air, the echoes hinting at the gravity of their undertaking. "I trust your journey was without incident." "All journeys hold their own weight," All Might responded, his voice a reassuring rumble in the somber atmosphere. He fell into step behind Dr. Fayumi, allowing her to lead him through the labyrinthine corridors, each twist and turn, drawing them deeper into the core of the facility. She was nervous and All Might could sense it. Not everyone meets the number one hero every day. All Might's booming laugh echoed off the walls. "I'm here to understand, not to intimidate," he replied, his smile as wide as ever. "Tell me about your work, Doctor." As they walked through the facility, Dr. Hikari explained their protocols, the necessity of their actions, and the importance of keeping these powerful children under control. All Might listened intently, his usual joviality replaced by a somber nod here and there. Their progression halted before a door of heightened fortification, distinguished by a small window offering a glimpse into the chamber beyond. Within, a figure sat in serene solitude, engrossed in the pages of a book, vibrant green locks falling in disarray around his focused gaze. All Might gave them a sad look before continuing to follow the doctor. Finally, he reaches the observation room in which he was greeted by Dr. Sato, the director. In the observation room, All Might turned to Mr. Sato, his eyes serious. "How do you feel about all this, Mr. Sato?" he asked. Mr. Sato hesitated, his professional facade cracking for a moment. "We do what must be done, for the greater good," he replied, but his heart ached with the weight of his words. All Might placed a reassuring hand on Mr. Sato's shoulder. "It's a heavy burden, to carry the future on your shoulders," he said softly. "But remember, these children are not just quirks, they are the hope of our world." Dr. Yamada interjected, his tone clinical. "We appreciate your sentiment, All Might, but we must remain detached. Emotions have no place in the nursery." All Might turned to face Dr. Yamada, his eyes piercing. "Even heroes need compassion, Doctor. Without it, we lose sight of why we fight." The staff exchanged glances, All Might's words stirring something within them they had long been trained to suppress. As the symbol of peace left the nursery, his words lingered, a gentle reminder that even in a place like this, humanity must prevail. The air in the nursery grew thick with tension as All Might's voice, usually so full of cheer, took on a grave tone. "There's a boy I've been searching for," he said, his eyes scanning the faces of the staff. 5 years old, goes by the name of Satoru Midoriya. Dr. Hikari's eyes flickered away for a fraction of a second before regaining her composure. "Many children pass through here, All Might," she replied, her voice steady. "We can't possibly remember them all." All Might's gaze didn't waver. "But you do remember him, don't you, Doctor?" he pressed, sensing the shift in the room. Dr. Yamada stepped forward, attempting to redirect the conversation. "All Might, let us show you the advancements we've made in quirk analysis," he offered, but the hero wasn't swayed. "I didn't come here for a tour, Doctor," All Might said firmly. "I came for answers about Satoru." The staff exchanged nervous glances, their professional facades cracking under the weight of All Might's scrutiny. Nurse Aiko finally broke the silence, her voice barely above a whisper. "He was here," she admitted, "but his power, it was unlike anything we've ever seen." All Might leaned in, his towering figure casting a long shadow. "What happened to him?" he demanded, his usual warmth replaced by an uncharacteristic edge. He was searching for the boy for years, but each time he found the boy's whereabouts, the boy was taken away somewhere else. It was plain and simple, the higher-ups were trying to turn him into a weapon. It was for the betterment of the society, but the boy's innocence comes first. "Answer me." Dr. Hikari sighed, the burden of truth too heavy to bear any longer. "Satoru's quirk was volatile. We couldn't contain it. He's no longer at the nursery," she confessed, avoiding All Might's piercing gaze. The atmosphere in the nursery was charged with a palpable tension, as All Might's usual composure gave way to a rare display of fury. "If you don't start talking, I'll have this place shut down," he thundered, his voice echoing through the corridors like a tempest. Dr. Hikari, who had always maintained an icy exterior, felt a shiver run down her spine. The sight of the world's greatest hero, his face twisted in anger, was enough to break through even her disciplined demeanor. We don't know where he is," she stammered, her words tumbling out in a rush. "But there was talk of a high-security confinement in Tokyo. It's where we send the most challenging cases." All Might's eyes narrowed. "Where in Tokyo?" he demanded, his towering figure seeming to loom even larger. Dr. Yamada, who had always prided himself on his unflappable nature, swallowed hard. The hero's rage was a force of nature, and in its wake, his resolve crumbled. "Shinjuku," he whispered. "There's a facility there, hidden beneath the cityscape. That's all I know, I swear." All Might's anger subsided as quickly as it had erupted, replaced by a steely determination. "Shinjuku," he repeated, the name now etched into his mission. "Thank you, Doctor." As the hero departed, the staff of the nursery were left in a stunned silence, the echoes of his promise to find Satoru Midoriya reverberating in their minds. They knew that All Might's quest was far from over, and that the fate of one boy could change the course of history. "Satoru Midoriya," All Might repeated softly, the name hanging in the air like a promise. "I will find him, no matter what it takes." As All Might departed, the staff of the nursery were left with the echo of his vow and the knowledge that the boy they couldn't control was out there, somewhere, with a power that could change the world. Behind the one-way mirror, a group of doctors and researchers observed a boy with clinical detachment. Dr. Fujita, the lead researcher, adjusted his glasses, peering intently at the boy who defied all their expectations. "He's extraordinary," Dr. Fujita murmured, making a note on his clipboard. "His quirk's complexity is beyond what we've seen before." Dr. Kano, a young researcher with a keen interest in quirk evolution, nodded in agreement. "It's as if he's evolving right before our eyes. If we could only harness his abilities." Beside them, Dr. Kayataka, the head of the facility, stood with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "We're not here to harness anything, Kano," he said sharply. "Our job is to understand and protect society from potential threats." "But isn't that a waste?" Dr. Kano pressed, his voice filled with a mix of frustration and awe. "To keep such power locked away?" Dr. Kayataka turned to him, his gaze stern. "Remember why we're here. We've seen what happens when power like this goes unchecked. It's not about what we could do, it's about what we should do." In the silence that followed, each member of the team was left with their own thoughts. Some wondered about the ethics of their work, others about the potential breakthroughs the child's quirk could bring. But all understood the gravity of their task, the delicate balance they had to maintain in a world where the line between hero and villain was ever so thin. Kayataka decided to complete his routine. Satoru sat cross-legged on the floor, his eyes closed in concentration. Within him, two personalities vied for dominance. Midoriya, the compassionate hero in training, and Gojo, the confident, almost arrogant sorcerer. They were two halves of a whole, yet as distinct as night and day. In the vast expanse of their shared mindscape, a place where thoughts and emotions manifested as vivid landscapes, Gojo Satoru found himself standing before a younger version of himself, Midoriya Izuku. The mindscape, reflecting their inner turmoil, was a stormy sky above a calm sea, a paradox in itself. "Listen, kid," Satoru began, his voice gentle but insistent, "you can't just believe everything they tell you. They said your mom's fine, but when's the last time you saw her? 5 frickin' years. In reality, the two entities that resided in the Mindscape were the same person. After Gojo lost his consciousness after his reincarnation, a new entity was slowly forming inside the brain of the boy. After the battle against All for One, Gojo was awakened. Gojo called Midoriya Midoriya, while Midoriya called Gojo Gojo. The boy looked up, his grip tightening on the figurine. The doctors say she's okay. They say she's resting so she can come to see me soon. These doctors treat you like a caged animal. They give you electric shocks as if they were medicine. Are you okay with that? Satoru's heart ached at the boy's words, a mirror to his own past hopes. That soon can mean never if you don't act. The boy bit his lip, a battle of trust waging war within him. But what if they're right? What if she's just sick? Gojo sighed, the boy used to be smarter, more confident, but now. Satoru leaned forward, his eyes earnest. And what if they're not? What if she needs you, and you're here, playing their obedient little prisoner? I've got a point, though. Why sit around waiting for scraps of truth when you have the power to seek it out yourself? The boy's eyes darted between his hands and Satoru's determined face. Satoru reached out, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. Being a hero isn't about being fearless. It's about being brave enough to do what's right, even when you're scared. Gojo's voice was a whisper now, a taunting breeze. Or you could just stay here, waiting for the good doctors to tuck you in at night. Your choice. Midoriya, we have the power to change everything, Gojo stated, his voice echoing in the boundless space. We can escape this confinement and find our mother. Midoriya, with a determined look that seemed too mature for his age, shook his head. No, Gojo. That's not the right way. We can't just use our power recklessly. There are consequences. Gojo's laugh rippled through the mindscape, stirring the waves below. Consequences? We're beyond such things. We are power incarnate. Why submit to their rules? Midoriya's fists clenched, and the sea stilled. Because those rules are what keep people safe. Being powerful doesn't give us the right to hurt others or act selfishly. The flash of lightning split the sky, mirroring Gojo's frustration. And what about us? What about your mother? Are we not worth bending those rules? Midoriya's eyes, bright with unshed tears, met Gojo's. Of course we are. But not like this. We have to be patient to find a way that doesn't bring harm to anyone else. Gojo knew that Midoriya was dying. The doctors were experimenting on him mentally more than physically, breaking apart his Midoriya self. Midoriya was almost gone. A little more push and he would be gone completely. Had Gojo not resided in the body would just be an empty husk, a mindless creature. Gojo turned away, staring into the distance where the sea met the sky. Patience is a luxury we don't have. Every moment we wait, your mother is out there, alone. Midoriya stepped forward, his voice soft but unwavering. I know. And it hurts more than anything. But she wouldn't want us to become monsters for her sake. The mindscape began to calm, the storm abating, and Gojo's anger subsiding. You truly believe that, don't you, Midoriya? Midoriya nodded, his resolve as clear as the now tranquil sea. Yes, I do. And I'll prove it. We'll find her, the right way. Gojo looked at the young boy, a sense of pride welling up within him. Then we'll do it your way, Midoriya. But remember, I'm here if you need me. Midoriya nodded. Their internal debate was interrupted by the sound of the door unlocking. Dr. Kayataka, the head of the facility, stepped in, his gaze impassive. It's time for your daily assessment, Satoru, he announced, his voice devoid of warmth. What a brat. He is supposed to be smart, but he is denser than a rock. I guess I should wait until he is unconscious. I don't know how, but somehow these doctors can suppress my cursed energy. Oddly enough, these quirks seem too much like cursed techniques. I can sense faint cursed energy from them. Is quirks a new form of cursed techniques? This is the same world, my world, no doubt about it. Tanada-kun was supposed to be the only anomaly, but now, everyone here is an anomaly. They have powers that very few possessed in my time. Their powers feel like a bit of cursed energy. Which can only mean, oh my nephew, what have you done? Satoru stood up, his dual nature settling into a temporary truce. I'm ready, doctor, he said. As they walked to the testing chamber, Satoru's thoughts were a whirlwind. He knew that the nursery wanted to turn Midoriya into a mindless drone, a beast of burden for their own ends. But they had underestimated him. He was not just a kid with a powerful quirk, he was Satoru Gojo, and he had a will of iron. The tests were grueling, designed to push his abilities to the limit. Yet, with each challenge, Midoriya's determination grew. He would not break, he would not bend. He would find a way to use his power for good, to prove that he was more than just a weapon. Dr. Kayataka watched, his expression unreadable. Impressive, Satoru, he said, once the tests were complete. But remember, you're here for a reason. Don't get any ideas about escaping. Satoru met the doctor's gaze, his eyes a mirror of the storm raging within him. "I know why I'm here, Doctor," he replied. "But one day, I'll show you and everyone else that you can't control me. I'm not a beast, I'm a hero." Satoru's voice echoed with a spectral resonance. "Push beyond your limits, Midoriya," he urged, his words a silent storm brewing in the young hero's mind. "You cannot help others if you are this weak." Midoriya's muscles tensed, his veins thrumming with the surge of power that Satoru's presence lent him. The physical world around him blurred into a backdrop for the mental battle he waged within. "I must keep going," Midoriya thought, his inner voice strained against the weight of his own exhaustion. The doctors watched, their eyes tracking every movement, every strained breath. They were oblivious to the mental dialogue, the coaxing whispers of Satoru urging Midoriya to tread the knife edge of his limits. But the thought, Midoriya's power flared, invisible forces latching onto the metal carcasses of cars, the hulking mass of trucks, and the jagged heft of boulders. They rose, wobbled, and danced to the tune of his will, a symphony of telekinetic prowess that defied gravity and reason. But with each lift, each monumental exertion, the boy's strength waned. His knees buckled, his vision tunneled, and the world dimmed to a pinpoint of light. "Is this my limit?" he wondered, a silent plea for respite that only Satoru could hear. "Come on, Midoriya." Gojo cheered. "Show those bastards what we are made of." Gojo was not proud of himself, but it had to be done, otherwise the doctors would prevail in their dirty schemes. "Only honing your telekinetic powers is not enough," Satoru advised. "You must be physically strong too. Come on now, break your previous record on the treadmill." Thus Midoriya ran. Midoriya ran on the treadmill at full speed 72 km per hour for half an hour, before his lungs and muscles could not take it anymore. And then, the collapse. Midoriya's body crumpled. It was the moment Satoru had been waiting for, the perfect chink in the armor of willpower that Midoriya had so valiantly upheld. Satoru seized control, his essence flooding the physical vessel that lay prone on the ground. The doctors rushed forward, their concern etched in furrowed brows and hurried commands. But it was too late, Satoru was now the puppeteer, and the body was his to command. As Midoriya's eyes fluttered open, they held a new, different light, a glint that belonged not to the boy who dreamed of being a hero, but to the entity that now held the reins. "The training continues," Satoru declared through Midoriya's lips, a smirk playing upon them as he rose to face the challenges anew. He crossed his fingers and muttered. "Domain expansion. Infinite void. Incident report. The catastrophe in the nursery Shinjuku division. Executive summary. An unforeseen and violent explosion occurred within the confines of the research facility at precisely 11:30 a.m., January 7, 2XX. The incident resulted in the escape of the test subject, known as Satoru Midoriya, identification number 144,490, who managed to incapacitate the monitoring staff and security personnel through unknown means. Detailed account. Upon the event, the facility's emergency protocols were activated, however, the subject utilized this moment of disarray to facilitate an escape. The observers and guards present during the incident were found in a state of unconsciousness, with subsequent medical examinations revealing severe neurological trauma. The distressing outcome of the situation is that 30% of the affected individuals have been declared brain dead due to the extent of their injuries. Current status. As of this report, the whereabouts of the aforementioned individual, Satoru Midoriya, remain unknown. An extensive search is underway, employing all available resources to locate the escapee. Cautionary note. It is imperative to highlight the extreme danger associated with the fugitive. Satoru Midoriya is considered highly hazardous, and it is strongly discouraged for anyone to engage with him. It is advised that only a collective of multiple S-rank heroes should attempt to approach or apprehend the individual in question. All Might's face told him everything, a face that spoke of anger. Good. All for One raised her by holding her neck, he could feel her cervical vertebral discs cracking. Drop her. All Might yelled. Just do what I said, All for One said calmly. Or else, he kept the sentence unfinished. The other heroes were not making any move. It was All for One's turn to make the move. Just when he was about to throw the woman in a random direction, he felt a chilling feeling behind him. "Ooh," a childish voice, they said. "What do we have here? A new type of cursed spirit? Cursed energy user? Nah, you're just a punk who doesn't know his place." All for One turned his head and at the boy, he was grinning like a maniac. The boy wasn't supposed to have a quirk, then how did he release such killing intent? "Move away, young man." All Might screamed, still breathing heavily, exhausted from his last attack. "He is a villain." "A villain?" The boy's grin got wider. "Maybe I should show him a real hero." The boy raised one of his hands and spoke in a clear yet confident voice. "Curse technique. Red." All for One found himself airborne, seemingly breaking through walls like a ball. The woman in his hand was long gone. "There," Gojo said as he gently put the woman in All Might's hand. "Take her away, let me take care of this." All Might didn't argue, he wasn't in his best right now. With a nod, he leaped away from them all. The crack split the air, a jagged tear in reality that deposited Satoru Gojo in the heart of a decaying city. Rubble crunched under his white boots as he surveyed the scene. It reeked of cursed energy, a potent cocktail swirling with a darkness he hadn't encountered before. "So, you're the cause of all this," Gojo drawled, his voice laced with boredom despite the wrecked cityscape before him. From the shadows emerged a tall figure, shrouded in a tattered cloak. All for One stepped forward, his yellow eyes gleaming with an unsettling hunger. All for One chuckled, a dry rasping sound. "Eager, I see. But underestimating your opponent is a costly mistake, especially against someone who can take all you have to offer." Gozo's lips curved into a playful smirk. "Taking all I have to offer? Sounds like you know what you're getting into." He unleashed a surge of cursed energy, the air crackling around him. Infinity is on. The world shimmered. Gozo's technique, a hereditary ability that warped space around him, made him untouchable. All for One narrowed his eyes, his gaze flickering across the distorted space. "Interesting," he muttered. "A barrier of infinity, is it? But barriers can be broken." All for One lunged, his hand outstretched. Gojo sidestepped effortlessly, the attack passing harmlessly through the warped space. "Is that all you've got?" Gojo taunted. Disappointing for a villain with such a grand reputation. All for One ignored the barb. He circled Gojo, a predator stalking its prey. This infinity troublesome. But his defenses can't possibly be infinite. A plan began to form in All for One's mind, a strategy to exploit the limits of Gozo's technique. The battle had begun, a clash between two titans, each with their own brand of power and arrogance. Gojo, the sorcerer with limitless defense, and All for One, the villain who craved to take everything, locked in a deadly dance. All for One shot forward, a blur of malice and raw power. He threw a punch, aiming not for Gojo himself, but for a stray piece of debris hovering near the sorcerer. Gojo, ever confident in his infinity, didn't react. The debris shattered against the invisible barrier, disintegrating into dust. As expected, All for One thought, a cruel smile spreading beneath his mask. The barrier can't protect everything within its domain. He lunged again, this time hurling a larger chunk of concrete. Gojo, with a slight flick of his wrist, redirected the debris around himself, sending it hurtling back towards All for One. The villain sidestepped with surprising agility, the concrete exploding harmlessly behind him. "You think you're so clever, hiding behind your little void," All for One sneered. "But it consumes cursed energy, doesn't it? How long can you maintain it before you run dry?" Gojo's smirk faltered for a brief moment, but he quickly recovered. "Trying to wear me down, punk. Not a bad strategy, but one with a flaw." He snapped his fingers, and a series of translucent blue boxes materialized around All for One, effectively caging him within his own limited space. All for One grunted, surprised by the sudden confinement. A prison technique. How quaint. He lashed out with a burst of dark energy, but it dissipated harmlessly against the cursed energy boxes. "These boxes," Gojo explained, his voice laced with amusement, "they don't just block attacks. They also restrict cursed energy flow. Let's see how you fight without your little quirks." A vein pulsed on All for One's temple. "You underestimate me, boy. I don't need quirks to overpower you." He surged forward, his body emitting a strange distortion. The cursed energy boxes creaked in protest as they strained to contain this new, raw power. Gojo's eyes narrowed behind his blindfold. The infinity boxes, usually unyielding, were warping under the pressure of All for One's unknown power. A flicker of concern crossed Gojo's face for the first time in the fight. "This isn't good," he muttered to himself. He wasn't sure what All for One was doing, but it was clear the villain possessed a trump card Gojo hadn't anticipated. The very air crackled with a chaotic energy, threatening to tear through the carefully constructed boxes. But the final surge of effort, All for One shattered the confines of the technique. The cursed energy boxes exploded outward, showering the debris-littered landscape in a rain of blue shrapnel. Gojo, caught off guard by the sudden release of pressure, stumbled back a few paces. "Impressive," Gojo said, a grudging respect tinging his voice. "You're stronger than I expected." All for One stood tall, his form crackling with an ominous energy. "Strength is a relative term, boy. You may have mastered space, but true power lies in mastering everything." He lunged at Gojo, his hand outstretched, fingertips glowing with a malevolent light. "Now, let's see how you handle a quirk I've been saving just for All Might. But I guess." Gojo raised his hand, ready to activate infinity once more. But a sliver of doubt gnawed him. What new quirk had All for One stolen? Was his infinity strong enough to withstand it? The uncertainty, a rare sensation for the sorcerer, fueled his determination to end the fight quickly. The air crackled with a chaotic energy, a surge of malice unlike anything Gojo had ever encountered. All for One, his form wreathed in a dark aura, embodied the very essence of cursed energy, twisted and amplified by his unknown quirk. Gojo, for the first time in the battle, felt a sliver of genuine concern. He wasn't sure what he was facing, but the sheer power radiating from All For One sent shivers down his spine. His infinity technique, usually unyielding, felt strangely fragile. But the battle cry that echoed through the ruined cityscape, All For One lunged. His hand, outstretched and crackling with ominous energy, was aimed not at Gojo himself, but at the very fabric of reality around him. Gojo instinctively activated infinity, the familiar barrier snapping into existence. But this time, it was different. The space around Gojo shimmered, warped under the strain of All For One's attack. The edges of the infinity barrier crackled, threatening to shatter completely. Gojo gritted his teeth, pouring more cursed energy into the technique to maintain the fragile shield. "This won't hold for long, boy," boomed All For One, his voice distorted with dark energy. "This quirk, it's called domain overriding. It breaks down any barrier and imposes my will on reality itself." Gojo's brow furrowed. Domain overriding. A quirk that could shatter his infinity. This was unlike anything he'd faced before. He knew he couldn't stay on the defensive. He needed to go on the offensive, and fast. But the surge of his own cursed energy, Gojo unleashed a powerful blast of hollow purple, a technique that reversed cursed energy flow and could potentially nullify All For One's attack. The opposing energies collided in a blinding flash of light, the very air screaming in protest. The resulting explosion tore through the devastated city, leveling what few structures remained. The shockwave rippled outward, shattering windows and buildings miles away. Gojo, shielded by his infinity barrier, felt the aftershock buffet him. He winced, momentarily disoriented. When the dust settled, the battlefield resembled a crater. All For One stood amidst the rubble, his figure shrouded in smoke, his mask cracked but otherwise unharmed. Gojo stood opposite him, his white coat singed and tattered at the edges. "An impressive counter," All For One rasped, his voice strained. "But not enough." He raised a hand, and the swirling smoke around him coalesced, revealing a pulsating sphere of dark energy. "This, boy, is your end." Gojo narrowed his eyes behind his blindfold. He'd never seen a condensed form of cursed energy like that before. It pulsed with a malevolent power that threatened to overwhelm even his infinity. "This is bad," he thought. "Even with infinity, I can't defend against something like that forever." He needed a new plan, and fast. His gaze darted around the battlefield, searching for an opening, any kind of advantage. His eyes landed on a shard of a fallen building, jutting out from the ground like a jagged spear. An idea, desperate but possible, flickered in his mind. "You think you can overwhelm me with brute force?" Gojo taunted, his voice laced with a bravado he didn't quite feel. "Let's see how you handle a little misdirection." With a surge of cursed energy, he propelled himself towards the shard of debris, maneuvering with his inhuman speed. All For One, caught off guard by the sudden shift in tactics, hesitated for a moment. By the time he reacted, Gojo was already a blur, using the debris as a makeshift ramp to launch himself high into the air. The sphere of dark energy streaked past where Gojo had been a moment earlier, embedding itself deep within the ground and creating a miniature crater. Gojo hung suspended in the air, his eyes narrowed in concentration. He raised a hand, palm facing All For One. "Alright," he thought, channeling his cursed energy. "Here goes nothing." The crimson aura flared around his hand, condensing into a blazing red orb that crackled with an energy far exceeding anything All For One had witnessed thus far. This was Gojo's curse technique reversal. Red, a technique that reversed his limitless ability and unleashed a devastating repulsive force. "Red!" Gojo roared, hurling the orb towards All For One. The villain's eyes widened in surprise. He hadn't anticipated this sudden shift in tactics. The red orb streaked through the air, leaving a trail of scorched earth in its wake. All For One, realizing the immense power it contained, couldn't risk a direct confrontation. But the snarl, he channeled his stolen quirk, hyper-regeneration, accelerating his body's functions to their peak. He blurred out of the way just as the red orb slammed into the spot where he had been standing. The impact sent shockwaves radiating outward, the very ground splitting open like a spiderweb. All For One, thrown off balance by the sheer force of the attack, stumbled back. He glared at Gojo, a mixture of rage and begrudging respect flickering in his yellow eyes. "An unexpected trick, child," he rasped, his voice laced with a hint of awe. "But it seems your little bluff is up. How many more of those attacks can you muster before your cursed energy runs dry?" Gojo, a smirk playing on his lips despite the severity of the situation, landed back on the broken battlefield. "Enough to finish you," he declared, his voice ringing with renewed confidence. The air crackled with cursed energy once more, a silent promise of the fierce battle to come. Gojo hung suspended in the air, a crimson aura erupting from his hand. It coalesced into a blazing red orb, a miniature sun crackling with the power of his curse technique reversal, red. This wasn't just any red though. As he molded the energy, a second, far more subtle shift occurred. Deep within the inferno, a cerulean glow pulsed faintly, the manifestation of his other technique, blue. Gojo understood the risky nature of this gambit. Red, by design, repelled everything, a terrifying force that pushed matter and cursed energy alike to the farthest reaches. Blue, on the other hand, attracted everything, a technique used for sealing cursed spirits. Combining them was like trying to control a miniature supernova, immensely powerful, but dangerously volatile. This might just end us both, Gojo muttered to himself, the strain of focusing both techniques evident in his voice. Yet, the alternative, all for one realizing his full potential, was far worse. But the battle cry that echoed through the ruined cityscape, Gojo launched the orb. It streaked towards all for one, a crimson meteor tinged with an unsettling azure luminescence. The villain's eyes widened in surprise. This wasn't the standard red he'd anticipated. All for one, ever reliant on his stolen quirks, activated hyper-regeneration, pushing his body to superhuman speeds. He blurred sideways, narrowly avoiding the direct impact. But as he did, a strange sensation washed over him. An invisible pull, like a colossal hand reaching out from the heart of the red orb, tugged at him, trying to yank him back into its path. The combined effect of red's repulsion and blue's attraction sent the orb on a bizarre, unpredictable trajectory. It curved sharply, chasing after all for one like a heat-seeking missile. The villain, thrown off balance by the unexpected pull, was forced to use all his agility to dodge the erratic orb. Gojo, seizing this momentary advantage, descended from the sky with incredible speed. His hand, cloaked in a shroud of condensed blue energy, slammed into the ground. The impact sent a shockwave through the battlefield, ripping fissures through the already ruined concrete. Domain expansion. Unlimited void. Gojo roared. The space around him warped, distorting reality itself. Buildings crumbled inwards, their materials folding into a hidden dimension. All for one, caught off guard by the sudden shift in his surroundings, found himself trapped within Gojo's limitless domain, a world devoid of physical form, a sensory void. They're cornered, Gojo's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere, laced with a hint of satisfaction. Now, let's see how you handle a world with knowing everything, but without doing anything. All for one's roar echoed through the endless wide expanse of Gojo's unlimited void domain. The villain, a formless entity adrift in the sensory void, writhed in defiance. His stolen quirks, the very foundation of his power, had withered and died within the domain's nullification field. Yet, a primal fear that had been dormant for centuries had been replaced by a chilling resolve. Gojo's disembodied voice chuckled from the boundless white. Empty barks from a cornered dog. Enjoy the silence, Punnel. It'll be the surest sign of your defeat. But the amusement in Gojo's voice was tinged with a sliver of unease. The domain, a technique he relied upon to neutralize even the most potent of cursed spirits, was trembling under the strain of all for one's unexpected counter. The maelstrom of raw, chaotic energy, a darkness unlike anything Gojo had encountered before, churned within the void, threatening to tear a hole through the very fabric of his reality. Gojo, ever the gambler, had taken a calculated risk. By using his cursed technique reversal, red, infused with the attractive pull of blue, he'd not only cornered all for one, but also gambled on draining the villain's stolen quirks within the void's nullification field. It was a desperate maneuver, a last-ditch effort to end the fight before his own immense cursed energy reserves depleted. The gamble, however, seemed to be backfiring spectacularly. All for one, stripped of his stolen power, had unearthed a wellspring of raw, primal energy that defied definition. It was a power that predated quirks themselves, a chaotic force that resonated with the very essence of destruction. Sweat beaded on Gojo's forehead, a physical manifestation of his internal turmoil despite being incorporeal within his own domain. For the first time in the battle, a sliver of genuine fear pricked at his heart. Could his infinity falter against such an unknown force? Could this be the end? The answer came swiftly and with a horrifying certainty. The chaotic energy within the void pulsed once, twice, and then with a deafening roar, ripped a jagged tear through Gojo's domain. The once pristine white space fractured, shards of reality peeling away like decaying wallpaper. Gojo roared in defiance, pouring all his cursed energy into maintaining his collapsing technique. His voice, strained and raw, boomed through the fractured reality. This isn't over, punk. I won't let you win. But the villain's laughter, a chilling cascade of dark amusement, echoed through the breaking world. Foolish child. You cannot contain what you don't understand. This is the will of all for one, and it will consume everything. The tear in the domain widened, revealing a glimpse of the real world, the ruined cityscape, bathed in the ominous glow of the impending chaos. Gojo, desperate to contain the breach, unleashed his signature technique, the infinity barrier. But the barrier, usually unyielding, flickered and strained under the pressure of the chaotic energy. In that split second, Gojo knew his infinity alone wouldn't hold. He needed something more, something with the power to erase not just cursed energy, but the very concept of the attack itself. With a deep breath, he channeled his cursed energy, a torrent of swirling blue and red. Hollow purple. Gojo roared, unleashing his most potent technique. The sphere of pure cursed energy, devoid of color and intent, materialized in his hand. It wasn't a violent attack, but a silent erasure, a technique that reversed the flow of cursed energy and annihilated it at its very core. Gojo hurled the sphere of hollow purple at the tier in the domain, a desperate last act to prevent the chaotic energy from spilling out and consuming the world. The sphere, a beacon of hope in the midst of despair, hurtled towards the ever-widening breach. The impact was silent, devoid of any flashy explosion. The sphere of hollow purple simply touched the chaotic energy, and then silence. The chaotic energy, the darkness that threatened to engulf everything, simply ceased to exist. The tier in the domain flickered for a moment before snapping shut, leaving behind a pristine white expanse once more. Gojo, panting heavily, deactivated his domain. The real world materialized around him, the ruined cityscape bathed in the soft glow of the dawn. He looked around, searching for any sign of All for One, any indication that the villain had survived the encounter with hollow purple. But there was nothing. No trace of darkness, no lingering aura of malice. All for One, it seemed, had been utterly erased from existence. Gojo, for the first time in the fight, allowed himself to fall. Before losing consciousness, a childish voice spoke. "Who are you?" "That's 19,000 yen," said the barber, handing back some change. "Keep it," Satoru said with a grin, flipping a coin into the tip jar. "Thank you," the barber replied, bowing. "Hope to see you again." Satoru stepped outside and admired his new look in the mirror. He gave his reflection a cheeky kiss. "Look at you, Mr. Handsome," he chuckled, earning some funny stares from people walking by. "Don't fall too hard for me." His hair was now as white as snow, and his eyes, hidden behind blue contacts, sparkled like ice. Dressed in a royal purple sweatshirt and pants, he looked like he had just walked out of a storybook. The round glasses he wore were just for show, to keep his bright eyes a secret. One might wonder how Satoru got the cash for his fancy new style. Turns out, the Gojo family had a bank account nobody knew about. And guess what? The Midoriyas were actually related to the Gojos. A little snooping around, and Satoru found himself a nice little treasure. Interesting. Would you stop being a total embarrassment? Midoriya said from inside their mindscape. What? Gojo pouted. It's necessary for the mission, remember? I understand that this disguise is necessary, but acting like this is not, retorted Midoriya. Brat. Old man. You, how dare you? You dare mock my beauty and youth. Take that back. A low voice interrupted their debate. Are you okay, Kiro? Satoru looked to see a girl in green. Oh, a frog girl. That's new. She has that weird hairstyle too. Totally Halloween material. Are you okay? She asked. I am absolutely fine, kid a frog girl. Satoru said with a grin. God, she needs a sunglass, that smile will make her blind. I was just admiring the beauty in front of me. You're bold, aren't you? She showed no sign of emotion. No, don't get the wrong idea. I was talking about myself. So you are a narcissist? She remarked. I just happen to be an admirer of beauty. The frog girl sighed and left. Gojo? Midoriya's voice echoed through the mindscape. What now? Gojo replied, his gaze never leaving the street. You can't just speak to her in that manner. It's disrespectful. Satoru Gojo, unfazed, continued his stride, the gravel crunching beneath his feet. And you're the expert. He quipped, a smirk playing on his lips. Come on, we have more pressing matters. Our mission, what's your understanding of it? Midoriya hesitated, his mind racing. The same as yours, I suppose. Humor me, Gojo insisted, his eyes twinkling with a challenge. With a sigh, Midoriya relented. The nursery has set us a 2-day deadline to locate our mother. Correct. But ponder the reason behind it. Midoriya furrowed his brow. To evaluate our stealth abilities and our aptitude for tracking, I presume. Spot on, Gojo acknowledged, his approval evident. Yet, doubt clouded Midoriya's thoughts. But doesn't this seem a tad too straightforward? Does it? Gozo's question hung in the air, almost rhetorical. Well, we could simply inquire around and… Without raising suspicion, Gojo interjected sharply. Midoriya paused, the realization dawning on him. You mean to find her without alerting the nursery? Can you? Gozo's voice was now a whisper, barely audible over the city's din. I can try, but it won't be easy. That's the point, Gojo stated, a knowing look in his eye. The true test lies in the subtlety of our approach, the finesse of our execution. Remember, it's not just about finding her, it's about proving ourselves. Now what happens when a hero shows up? Gojo asked. We surrender? Ask for an autograph? No, dummy, Gojo sighed. We fight back, show them what we can do. Their conversation was interrupted by a booming voice that echoed through the streets. Foul villain terrorizing innocent civilians. Fear not, for I, the hero Backdraft, am here to dispense justice. A burly man with a flame-retardant mask and a steam-powered backpack landed heavily in front of them. He glared at Satoru, his eyes narrowing at the teenager's flamboyant outfit. "Alright, punk, what's your game?" Satoru, ever the showman, grinned. "Whoa there, hero. No need to get your circuits in a twist. I am just admiring the scenery." "Scenery, huh?" Backdraft scoffed. "This isn't a tourist trap, kid. This is hero business. Now spill it. What are you planning? You were staring at that bank for 15 minutes. Midoriya, ever cautious, nudged Satoru. "Maybe we should cooperate. Explain we're new to the city." Satoru, however, seemed to relish the situation. He winked at Midoriya. "Nah, where's the fun in that? Besides, a little test run never hurt anyone, right?" Before Midoriya could protest further, Satoru lunged towards Backdraft with surprising speed. Backdraft, caught off guard by the teenager's sudden movement, activated his quirk. A blast of scorching steam erupted from his backpack, engulfing the area in a thick cloud. But Satoru, his white hair momentarily obscured by the vapor, seemed to anticipate the attack. "Infinity," Satoru muttered, a blue shimmer barely visible within the steam. Backdraft's attack harmlessly dissipated around him, leaving the hero bewildered. "What the?" Backdraft sputtered, his steam momentarily cutting out. He couldn't see anything through the dense cloud. Satoru, using his limited visibility to his advantage, reappeared behind Backdraft in a blur. With a playful jab to the hero's pressure point, he rendered Backdraft unconscious. The burly man crumpled to the ground with a soft thud. Midoriya, his mind reeling from the display of Satoru's power and unorthodox tactics, couldn't help but blurt out, "You knocked out a pro hero." Satoru chuckled. "Relax, it was just a little pressure point thingy. He'll be fine in a few minutes. Besides, consider it a valuable lesson, kid. Sometimes, the best defense is a good defense or a well-placed jab to the funny bone." "That's not funny, Gojo," Midoriya exclaimed, his voice laced with a mixture of exasperation and grudging respect. "We need to get out of here before someone else sees this." Satoru, with a mischievous glint in his eye, held up a finger. "Before we go, let's leave him a little parting gift." With a mischievous grin, Satoru rummaged through Backdraft's utility belt and retrieved a pair of bright pink, sequin handcuffs. He then proceeded to secure Backdraft's wrists with a flourish. "There," Satoru said, clapping his hands together. "Now that's a sight to behold. Consider it a fashion statement, hero style." Midoriya groaned, burying his face in his hands. "You're impossible, Gojo." Satoru approached the hospital reception with a practiced ease. The receptionist, a woman with a tired smile and weary eyes, looked up from her computer screen. "Can I help you?" she inquired politely. Satoru, with a practiced charm that even surprised Midoriya, leaned forward. "Good morning, ma'am. We're here to visit a patient. Inko Midoriya, room?" His voice trailed off, feigning uncertainty. The receptionist tapped away at her keyboard. "Ah, yes, Ms. Midoriya is in room 207, on the 3rd floor. Family only, I'm afraid." A pang of worry shot through Midoriya. Family only. They were technically here under false pretenses, two entities inhabiting one body. Satoru, however, seemed unfazed. "Family, you say?" He chuckled, his voice dripping with a practiced sincerity. "Consider us distant relatives. We just heard the news and wanted to pay our respects." The receptionist hesitated, her gaze flickering between them. Satoru, sensing her apprehension, flashed a winning smile that could disarm a villain. "We understand if we can't see her. Perhaps you could just tell her we were here." The woman's demeanor softened slightly. "Well, alright then. But please keep it short, there are other patients who need rest." Relief washed over Midoriya. They were in. Satoru, with a quick thank you, steered them towards the elevators, his steps purposeful despite the turmoil within. Reaching the 3rd floor, they navigated the sterile corridors, a tense silence hanging between them. Midoriya, overwhelmed with a mix of emotions, fear, anticipation, and a sliver of hope, felt a cold sweat prickle his skin. He was about to meet his mother, the woman he barely knew. Satoru, ever the pragmatist, nudged him telepathically. "Alright, here's the plan. I'll use my teleportation to get us inside the room and my presence erasure to mask our auras. We have a limited window, so make the most of it." Midoriya gulped, his voice a mere whisper in their mindscape. "Are you sure this is safe? What if someone senses us?" "Relax, kid," Satoru replied, using his childhood nickname for comfort. "I've done this 100 times. Trust me." With a deep breath, Satoru focused his cursed energy. The world around them shimmered for a split second, and then they were standing inside room 207. The sterile scent of disinfectant filled their senses. Midoriya's heart hammered against his ribs as his eyes fell upon the figure lying on the bed. Inko Midoriya, pale and gaunt, was hooked up to a web of machines, her chest rising and falling with a shallow rhythm. Her once vibrant green hair was dull and lifeless, splayed across the white pillow. A wave of emotions, grief, anger, and a fierce protectiveness threatened to overwhelm Midoriya. This frail woman, barely clinging to life, was his mother. The woman who had carried him, nurtured him, and sacrificed so much for him. Tears welled up in his eyes, blurring his vision. Satoru, sensing his emotional turmoil, placed a hand on his shoulder, a silent gesture of support. Midoriya, grateful for the grounding presence, took a step closer to the bed. He reached out, his hand hovering hesitantly over his mother's pale one. The warmth of her skin, a stark contrast to the coolness of the sterile sheets, sent a jolt through him. It was the first time he had ever touched her. "Mom," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "It's Satoru. I'm here." Silence. The machines whirred rhythmically, a constant reminder of her precarious state. But as Midoriya spoke, a single tear rolled down Inko's cheek, tracing a glistening path down her pale face. Was it a coincidence? A response to his voice, a flicker of recognition from the depths of her coma. Midoriya clung to that sliver of hope, his heart swelling with a fierce determination. He wouldn't give up on her. He would find a way to save her, to bring her back to him. Together, he and Gojo would unravel the secrets of their past, of the experiment that had brought them together, and find a way to heal not just his mother, but the fractured world they now inhabited. In that sterile hospital room, bathed in the pale glow of medical equipment, Satoru and Midoriya stood vigil beside Inko's comatose form. The silence was broken only by the rhythmic hum of the machines and the quiet sniffles escaping Midoriya's nose. Gojo, ever the stoic observer, watched Midoriya with a mix of curiosity and concern. He understood the depth of Midoriya's emotions, the yearning for a mother he barely knew, the fear of losing her forever. It was a primal human bond, something even he, hardened by years of jujutsu battles, could recognize. "She's beautiful," Gojo whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion. Gojo's gaze flickered to Inko's face. He saw a woman with gentle features, a hint of Midoriya's signature green hair peeking out from under the white hospital cap. There was a peaceful serenity in her slumber, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within Midoriya. "She has your face, you know," Satoru said softly, hoping to offer some comfort. Midoriya looked up, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. "Really?" "Yeah," Satoru confirmed. "The same big doe-eyed look. You must have gotten them from her." A shaky smile tugged at the corner of Midoriya's lips. "Thanks, Gojo. I guess that makes sense." Their moment of connection was shattered by a sudden beeping from one of the machines. The rhythmic pulse quickened, turning into a rapid erratic pattern. Midoriya's heart lurched. "What's happening?" he cried, his voice tinged with panic. Satoru, his gaze fixed on the monitor, reacted instinctively. He surged forward, his blue cursed energy flaring around his hand. "Infinity," he muttered, a barrier snapping into existence just as the machine let out a loud alarm. A surge of electrical current crackled from the malfunctioning equipment, arcing towards Inko's bed. Satoru's barrier, invisible to the naked eye, deflected the current harmlessly. A sudden burst of cursed energy triggered the presence erasure technique, making them invisible to any potential witnesses who might have been alerted by the alarm. But the incident had disrupted the peaceful vigil. A flurry of nurses rushed into the room, their faces etched with concern. Satoru deactivated his technique as they swarmed around Inko, checking her vitals and resetting the faulty equipment. Midoriya, shaken from the near tragedy, remained by the bed, his eyes glued to his mother's face. The nurses, oblivious to their presence, worked with practiced efficiency. "Looks like a power surge," one nurse mumbled, her voice barely audible. "We should run a full diagnostic just to be safe." "I agree," another nurse replied, her gaze flickering to the now functioning monitor. "Let's get Dr. Hayashi in here too." As the nurses bustled around them, Gojo and Midoriya exchanged a silent look. They couldn't stay much longer. The risk of discovery was too great. "They lied," Midoriya yelled in the Mindscape. "They lied. They told us she was sick, but she is dying." "Calm down, boy," Gojo said. "Anger will get you nowhere." With a mental nudge, Gojo communicated their departure plan. Midoriya understood. They had to leave before the doctor arrived. One last time, Satoru leaned down and whispered in his mother's ear, his voice laced with a promise. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll find a way to bring you back." Then, with a final flicker of Satoru's cursed energy, they vanished from the sterile room, leaving no trace of their presence behind. Outside the hospital, under the cloak of a starlit night, they materialized on a rooftop overlooking the cityscape. The cool night air whipped around them, a stark contrast to the sterile warmth of the hospital. "We need to find a way to heal her," Midoriya said, his voice trembling with determination. "But how?" Gojo, his gaze fixed on the glittering cityscape, remained silent for a moment. "There are possibilities," he finally said, his voice thoughtful. "But they'll be risky. We'll need to tread carefully." "I don't care how risky it is," Midoriya declared, his voice firm. "I won't lose her. Not again." Gojo nodded, a flicker of respect igniting in his eyes. "Then let's start planning, kid." We'll find a way to save your mother, even if it means turning the world upside down." Satoru's boots hit the ground with a soft thud as he emerged into the dimly lit alley, his heart racing from the thrill of the jump. He straightened his jacket and stepped forward, the shadows of the narrow space dancing around him. The city's hum was a distant murmur, but it was a voice that caught his attention, a voice that made him freeze in his tracks. "Young Midoriya," called a deep familiar tone, echoing off the walls. Satoru whirled around, his muscles tensing, ready for anything. His eyes searched the darkness until they landed on a towering figure stepping out of the shadows. "All Might," he gasped, disbelief etching his features. It was as if Midoriya himself had taken the reins, his presence felt in Satoru's wide-eyed stare. The hero approached, his cape billowing behind him like a flag of hope. "I've been on your trail for years," All Might declared, his voice a mix of relief and determination. Every snippet of news that hinted at your whereabouts, I followed them all." Satoru's voice wavered, betraying his inner turmoil. "Why? Are you here to take me in?" The thought of confronting his idol sent shivers down his spine. All Might's chuckle was warm, dispelling the chill in the air. "No, my boy, not at all," he reassured, his smile as bright as the sun breaking through clouds. "After that fateful day, I made sure your mother received the care she needed. But you, Satoru, you vanished like a whisper in the wind. Rumors reached me that you were hidden away, your powers locked up lest they turn against us." Satoru's stance softened, his curiosity piqued. "But why search for me?" he inquired, the edge of his fear now dulled. The hero's grin never wavered as he replied, "It was the look in your eyes, lad. A look of pure justice, the spirit of a true hero. It's a look I chase every dawn when I face my reflection, yet it's a fleeting thing, hard to hold on to. But you had it in spades, unfiltered, raw, alongside a power that was nothing short of astonishing." All Might's gaze drifted skyward, lost in a moment of reverence. "My own mentor wore that smile, and it was no facade," he continued, his voice tinged with nostalgia. "That genuine smile, it stirred something deep within me. And so, I've scoured the world for you. To be a hero?" Satoru's voice was now a whisper of hope, a dream on the cusp of reality. "Absolutely, young man," All Might beamed, his grin stretching even wider. "You see, in my eyes, you've always been a hero. I believe UA High School is where you belong." Satoru's brow furrowed. "But the nursery?" "I know all about it," All Might interjected, his tone firm yet encouraging. "That's precisely why you must enter UA under guise. I have every confidence you'll triumph in the entrance exam. Declare I am here. At the sports festival, and once you've made a name for yourself, the nursery will be powerless to touch you." Satoru nodded, a light of understanding igniting in his eyes. "I see. And it doesn't end there," All Might pressed on. "A pro hero will take you under their wing for an internship. Then comes the provisional license test. Once you've conquered these challenges," All Might concluded, "the nursery's grip will loosen, and you'll be free." Satoru's lips curved into a determined smile. "I believe you're right." Inside the Mindscape, Gojo grinned. "Well," he said. "I guess it can't be helped, but it's nothing we can't do." An image of a smiling child popped in his mind. "Believe it." Satoru, now Izuku Gojo, stood at the gates of UA High School, his gaze traveling up the towering walls that seemed to touch the sky. The sheer magnitude of the institution made his heart skip a beat. "It's massive," he whispered to himself, a sense of awe wrapping around him like a warm blanket. Yet, as he stepped through the gates, a flicker of nostalgia tugged at his heartstrings. Jujutsu High had its charm, though, he mused, the memories of the ancient corridors and the echo of distant battles lingering in his mind. "I wonder if it still stands, proud and stoic amidst a march of time." Satoru's mind raced. "This is it," he told himself. "The first step towards becoming a hero. Towards proving myself." He could feel Midoriya's spirit within him, urging him on, a silent guardian on his shoulder. "Do it for both of us," the voice seemed to say. "For all the dreams we've shared." Lost in thought, he barely noticed the hustle and bustle of the excited examinees around him, each one a bundle of nerves and dreams, their eyes sparkling with the promise of the future. Suddenly, a sharp nudge jolted him from his reverie. "Out of the way." A brash voice barked. Stumbling to the side, Satoru caught a glimpse of spiky blonde hair and an all too familiar scowl. Bakugo, he realized, a mix of irritation and fondness washing over him. It was Katsuki Bakugo, his childhood friend turned rival, his presence as explosive as ever. Satoru straightened up, brushing off his jacket. Always so subtle, Kakin, he thought, a wry smile playing on his lips. But there was no time for banter, the entrance exam loomed large, a mountain to be scaled. In the wake of his collision with Bakugo, Satoru, now donning the alias Izuku Gojo, felt a surge of adrenaline. His heart was a drumbeat echoing through the cacophony of excited chatter and nervous laughter that filled the air around UA High. He took a moment to steady his breath, to center himself amidst a storm of anticipation that threatened to sweep him away. As he glanced around, taking in the sea of faces, each one a canvas of hopes and fears, his gaze fell upon the grandeur of the school. It loomed before him, a colossus of education and heroism. Impressive, he mused, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. But the storied halls of Jujutsu High held a charm that this modern marvel can't quite capture. His thoughts drifted to the venerable institution he once knew, its aged walls steeped in history and mystery. Does it still stand, I wonder? A bastion of the old ways in this ever-changing world, he pondered, a wistful note threading through his musings. A sudden commotion pierced the murmur of the crowd. His eyes darted towards the source of flight of stairs, where a girl with a round face teetered precariously, her foot caught in the last moment of a misstep. Time seemed to slow as she began to topple, a silent gasp escaping her lips. Without a second thought, Satoru sprang into action, his body moving with the grace and urgency of a seasoned hero. He dashed across the space between them, the world blurring into streaks of color and light. Just as gravity claimed its due, Satoru's arms wrapped around the girl, halting her descent. They stood there for a heartbeat, the girl safe in his embrace, her wide eyes meeting his. A murmur of awe rippled through the onlookers, but for Satoru, there was only the steady beat of his heart and the weight of the life he had just safeguarded. "Are you okay?" Satoru asked, his voice steady yet laced with concern. The girl nodded, her cheeks flushed with a mix of embarrassment and gratitude. "Yes, thank you," she stammered, finding her footing once again. "I am Izuku," he said. For a moment, they were suspended in time, her wide brown eyes locked onto his. "Achako," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the thudding of her heart. "Easy there, Achako," Satoru said, his tone gentle as he set her back on solid ground. "You're safe now." Achako's cheeks bloomed with a rosy hue, a stark contrast to the pallor that had claimed her just moments before. "Thank you," she breathed out, her gratitude shining in her gaze like stars in the night sky. But the tension of the fall still lingering in the air, Satoru felt a smile creep onto his face. He looked down at Achako, who was still clutching her books close to her chest, and decided to break the ice with a touch of humor. "You know, Achako," he began, his voice light and teasing, "if you wanted to fly, UA has a course for that. No need to test gravity on your own." Achako blinked, then let out a giggle, the sound bubbling up from her like a spring of mirth. "I'll keep that in mind," she replied, her laughter easing the last of her nerves. "But I think I'll stick to the ground for now. It seems safer, especially with heroes in training around to catch me." Satoru chuckled, the sound mingling with Achako's laughter. "Well, just to be safe, I'll add gravity checker to my resume. You never know when that might come in handy during the hero course." With a final nod of acknowledgement, Satoru turned away, his mind already racing ahead to the challenges that awaited him. But as he melded back into the throng of students, he couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter, brief as it was, had changed something within him. Satoru took his place among them, his resolve as firm as the ground beneath his feet. "Izuku Gojo," he announced to himself, his voice a mere whisper, but his determination loud and clear. "Let's show them what we're made of." And with that, Satoru stepped forward into the unknown, ready to carve out his destiny, one trial at a time. As the time for the written test approached, Satoru, under the guise of Izuku Gojo, felt a familiar flutter of nerves. He took his seat in the examination hall, a sea of desks and anxious examinees stretching out before him. The air was thick with anticipation, the collective breath of potential heroes held in suspense. The test papers were distributed, and Satoru flipped through the pages, his eyes scanning the questions. They ranged from theoretical hero scenarios to complex problem-solving exercises, each one designed to challenge the mind of a future hero. With a deep breath, he picked up his pencil and began. The questions seemed to dance before his eyes, but his mind was sharp, honed by years of study and an unquenchable thirst for knowledge. He worked through the test with a focus that was almost palpable, his pencil moving with confidence and precision. As the minutes ticked by, Satoru found himself lost in the world of questions and answers, a world where his alias, Izuku Gojo, could shine. He tackled each question with a blend of intuition and logic, his answers a testament to his dedication and his desire to succeed. Finally, as the last seconds of the exam slipped away, Satoru set down his pencil. He leaned back in his chair, allowing himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The test had been a gauntlet, but he had run it with the grace of a seasoned pro. The UA High auditorium thrummed with an electric tension. A cacophony of nervous chatter and excited shouts filled the air, punctuated by the occasional squeak of a jittery shoe on polished floors. Aspiring heroes, the next generation of legends, were crammed shoulder to shoulder, their energy a tangible force. Sunlight streamed through the high windows, casting the room in a hopeful glow that couldn't quite dispel the underlying anxiety. In the very center of this whirlwind stood Present Mick, a human megaphone booming with infectious enthusiasm. His signature yellow costume, complete with a shock of spiky blonde hair, commanded attention. Every exuberant wave of his hand sent ripples of movement through the crowd. His booming voice, amplified by the speakers, sliced through the excited din. "Buckle up, future heroes." He roared, his voice tinged with the electricity of a hero about to leap into action. While the rest of the hopefuls were caught up in a frenzy of adoration for the charismatic hero, Izuku Gojo stood apart, an island of calm in a sea of fangirling. His eyes were not on present Mick, but on the stage where the real challenge awaited the mock city that would serve as the battleground for their practical exam. Today, you'll be facing off against villainous robots in a simulated urban environment. Each point he made was punctuated by a surge of cheers from the crowd, their adulation echoing through the vast hall. There are 1-pointers and 2-pointers, which you'll need to take down to score points. The crowd murmured, notes of strategy and speculation weaving through the conversations. But it was the mention of the 0-pointer that sent a ripple of unease through the room. President Mick's voice dropped a notch, the playful lilt replaced with a hint of seriousness. "Now, the 0-pointer," he continued, "isn't your average training bot. It's not meant to be defeated, you defeat it, you get no score. It's a test, a harsh crucible that will forge true heroes from aspiring ones. It will assess your judgment, your ability to stay focused on the true objective amidst the chaos." Izuku Gojo, however, remained an island of calm amidst the frenzy. The mention of the 0-pointer didn't faze him, it was merely another variable in the equation he was determined to solve. Unlike his anxious peers, he didn't see an insurmountable obstacle, but a challenge to be conquered. A chance to prove his mettle. As the briefing concluded and the massive bodies surged towards the exit, Izuku moved with a quiet determination, his path unwavering. He wasn't interested in joining the throng of hero-worshipping fans. He was here for a purpose: to prove himself worthy, to claim his rightful place among the ranks of legends. And of course, to save his mother. "All right," President Mick said. "One go." "What? There's no countdown in real life." Everyone rushed inside. As Izuku stepped into the mock city, a wave of movement surged past him. Hopeful heroes, a kaleidoscope of quirks on display, scattered in all directions. Some, fueled by pure aggression, lunged straight for the towering 2-pointers, metallic monstrosities that promised a hefty point reward for their takedown. Others, perhaps more cautious, opted for the less challenging 1-pointers, methodical point accumulation strategy. A flash of pink caught Izuku's eye. It was a girl with the acid quirk. Her entire body, a vibrant shade of pink, pulsed with acidic energy. With a flick of her wrist, she unleashed a corrosive stream, effortlessly melting the metal casing of a nearby robot. Its metallic innards spilled out in a shower of sparks. Not far from her, a peculiar sight unfolded. A small purple-haired boy launched a barrage of sticky purple spheres from his head. These spheres connected with the robots, adhering them together in a grotesque, immobilized mess. The sight elicited chuckles from some onlookers, but the effectiveness of the strategy was undeniable. Further down the street, a girl with zero gravity, a Chaco, quirk wobbled precariously as she unleashed her power. Robots, lifted a few meters into the air, began to topple over, their metallic bodies crashing to the ground with resounding thuds. Unfortunately, the exertion seemed to have taken its toll on her, judging by the grimace on her face and the rising bile in her throat. The cackle of electric energy announced the arrival of a blond boy, his hair crackling with electricity as he zapped his way through a group of robots. Meanwhile, a girl with large earlobe-shaped jacks extending from her head launched a sonic attack that sent vibrations through the metal bodies of nearby robots, effectively disabling them. And then there was the frog-like girl from the street that day. Her long prehensile tongue whipped through the air, wrapping around a robot and constricting it with surprising strength. The robot sputtered and writhed before going completely still. Izuku, perched atop a building overlooking the chaos, observed it all with a keen analytical eye. A smirk tugged at his lips. This was a display of raw power, of unconventional tactics, a testament to the diversity of quirks. It was exhilarating. But within him, a quiet determination burned. He wouldn't just be a participant in this grand spectacle. He'd surpass them all. He'd break All Might's record, etching his name in UA's history. The mock city was his playground, and he was ready to show everyone what a true hero in the making looked like. The mock city sprawled before Izuku Gojo like a concrete jungle, its islands punctuated by the mechanical whirring of robots. His eyes, sharp as a hawk's, scanned the urban labyrinth for his next target. There, a 2-pointer, its metal frame glinting in the artificial light, unaware of the predator in its midst. With a whisper as soft as a shadow, Izuku in the blink of an eye, he was behind the robot. His fist, glowing with an ominous purple hue of cursed energy, shot forward. Divergent fist. He breathed out, and the 2-pointer crumbled like paper match under his strike, its components scattering across the ground. He didn't pause to admire his handiwork, there was no time for that. Another 1-pointer lumbered into view, its sensors locking onto him. Izuku's lips curved into a half smile. "Red," he whispered, and a surge of power coursed through his arm, a crimson wave of destruction that left nothing but scrap metal in its wake. The robots kept coming, each one a new challenge, a new opportunity to demonstrate his prowess. Blue, he intoned for a lesser foe, the energy released just enough to disable without overkill, a minimum output for a maximum effect. One after another, they fell before him, each defeat marked by a quiet count. 34, Izuku noted, his voice a murmur of satisfaction mixed with hunger for more. Not bad. But far from enough. His gaze then caught a cluster of robots, a perfect opportunity to showcase the breadth of his power. With a deep inhale, he centered himself, his energy pooling and swirling within. Red, he declared, louder now, his voice resonating with the force of his attack. The air itself seemed to tear, a red maelstrom erupting from his fist, tearing through the group of robots like a scythe through wheat. Metal shrieked and sparks flew as Izuku Gojo, the embodiment of confidence and power, stood amidst the wreckage of his foes. His eyes, sharp and calculating, locked onto a two-pointer robot. In a fluid motion, he sidestepped its lumbering charge, his body low and coiled like a spring. With precision, he struck at the robot's joint, a critical point, with a concentrated burst of cursed energy. The impact resonated through the metal, vibrations traveling up its frame, causing circuits to fry and gears to jam. The two-pointer stumbled, its systems failing, and collapsed into a heap of useless scrap. He didn't pause to watch it fall, his attention was already on the next target. A one-pointer approached, its single eye glowing ominously. Izuku pivoted on his heel, closing the distance in a heartbeat. He delivered a swift uppercut to its underbelly, where the armor was weakest. The force of the blow propelled the robot upwards before it crashed back down, its internal mechanisms shattered beyond repair. The battlefield was alive with the sound of whirring motors and clashing metal, but Izuku moved through it all with a dancer's grace. He ducked under a swipe from another one-pointer, planting his palm against its torso. A pulse of cursed energy flowed from his hand, and the robot's casing buckled inward, a dent marking the spot where its core systems were disrupted. 54, he counted under his breath, a tally of his conquests. But there was no time for complacency. A group of robots, a mix of one and two-pointers, converged on him. Izuku's stance widened, his energy surging. He launched forward, a streak of determination. His fists moved in a blur, striking with surgical precision at the weaknesses he had so keenly observed. Each hit was a calculated release of energy, just enough to disable but not destroy. Iida stood rigidly among the throng of UA High hopefuls, his glasses reflecting the bright lights of the auditorium. The air was charged with a palpable energy, a mix of determination and ambition, as each student prepared for the practical exam that lay ahead. Iida, ever the embodiment of discipline, ran through mental checklists, his internal engine revving in anticipation. As President Mick's voice boomed over the speakers, detailing the formidable challenge of the mock city and its robotic inhabitants, Iida couldn't help but feel his pulse quicken. This was it, the moment where preparation met opportunity, where future heroes were forged. But amidst a sea of eager faces, one stood out, a white-haired enigma, his presence almost ghost-like. He was an unknown variable, a silent storm that none had predicted. As the test commenced, this mysterious figure moved with a grace that belied his power, his every action a devastating blow to the mechanical foes that dared challenge him. The students watched, awestruck, as robot after robot fell before him, their metal carcasses a testament to his strength. Whispers rippled through the crowd, a growing chorus of speculation and wonder. Who was this prodigy who dismantled the opposition with such ease? Iida, too, found himself caught in the wake of the white-haired enigma's prowess. His own resolve hardened, here was a benchmark, a standard to strive towards. The sight of the enigma tearing through the robots like they were made of paper lit a fire within him, a burning desire to not just pass the test, but to excel. And as the exam drew to a close, the name of the white-haired enigma remained a mystery, but his impact was indelible. He had left an impression that would not soon be forgotten, a performance that would become the stuff of legend in the halls of UA High. For Iida and the rest, it was a clear message: the path to heroism was not just about strength, but about the will to push beyond limits, to redefine what was possible. The white-haired enigma had set the bar, and now it was up to them to rise to the challenge. Ichako Uraraka's heart was still fluttering from her earlier encounter with the mysterious white-haired boy who had saved her from a certain fall. She remembered his gentle yet firm grip, the way he had steadied her with ease. All she knew of him was his name, Izuku Gojo, a name that now echoed in her mind as she watched him move through the practical exam with a prowess that left her and the others in awe. She stood among her peers, her round eyes wide with amazement as the white-haired enigma dispatched robot after robot, his movements a blend of elegance and raw power. It was as if he danced between them, a waltz of destruction that was both beautiful and terrifying to behold. The surprise on her face was mirrored by those around her, each student whispering and pointing as Izuku Gojo made the impossible seem effortless. Ichako felt a mix of admiration and curiosity bubble within her. Who was this boy who wielded such strength with a calm that belied the chaos around him? As the test came to an end and the dust settled on the mock city, Achako found herself searching the crowd for that distinctive head of white hair. She wanted to know more about him, about the boy who had not only saved her, but had also inspired her with his undeniable skill. Mineta Minoru, with his distinct purple balls of hair and a somewhat questionable motivation for heroism, was among the crowd of UA High hopefuls. His goal was simple, yet unabashedly honest. He wanted to become a hero to impress girls. The practical exam was his stage, a chance to prove his worth and, hopefully, catch the eye of a few admirers along the way. As the test began, Mineta's eyes were not on the robots, but on the potential audience of his heroic feats. He bounced from one foot to the other, his quirk at the ready, determined to show off his unique abilities. But then, the white-haired enigma burst into action. Mineta watched, his mouth agape, as Izuku tore through the robots with a finesse that Mineta could only dream of. It was a display of raw power and skill that captivated everyone's attention, overshadowing Mineta's own attempts at heroism. The realization hit Mineta like a ton of bricks. To truly impress, to truly stand out, it wasn't enough to just want to be a hero for the sake of admiration. What the boy showed was a dedication to the hero's path that went beyond superficial desires. Sayu Asui, known for her calm and straightforward demeanor, stood among the other UA High examinees with her characteristic unflappable presence. She remembered the white-haired boy she had encountered in front of the barber shop, the one with the air of self-assuredness that bordered on narcissism. He had seemed more interested in his reflection than anything else at the time. As the practical exam unfolded before her, Sayu watched with her wide, observant eyes as the same boy, Izuku Gojo, moved through the mock city. His strength was undeniable, his technique flawless. Each robot that came before him was dispatched with a precision that spoke of a deep understanding of combat. Sayu couldn't help but be surprised. The boy she had pegged as a narcissist was revealing himself to be a powerhouse of potential. His actions on the field were a stark contrast to the image he had presented outside the barber shop, and Sayu found herself reassessing her initial judgment. The way Izuku dismantled the robots, it was clear he wasn't just strong, he was exceptional. And as the test came to an end, Sayu knew that Izuku Gojo was a name she would need to remember. He was not just a narcissist with a pretty face, he was a competitor and perhaps a future hero worth watching. Denki Kaminari, with his easygoing smile and a somewhat scatterbrained reputation, mingled among the other UA High hopefuls. His laid-back demeanor often led others to underestimate him, but beneath the surface, there was a spark of potential waiting to ignite. As the practical exam commenced, Denki's usual nonchalance gave way to a focused intensity. He was here to prove himself, to show that he was more than just comic relief. His quirk crackled to life, electricity dancing at his fingertips, ready to be unleashed. But then, his attention was drawn to the white-haired enigma, Izuku Gojo, who moved through the mock city like a force of nature. Denki watched, his mouth agape, as the boy dismantled robot after robot with a power that was raw and undeniable. Even Denki, who often missed the finer points of hero work, could recognize the sheer magnitude of the boy's strength. It was a display of what true power looked like, a lesson in heroism that didn't need words. Izuku's actions spoke volumes, each move, each decision, resonating with a clarity that even Denki could understand. As the exam drew to a close, Denki found himself inspired by the white-haired enigma. He realized that true power wasn't just about flashy moves or loud declarations, it was about the impact one could make, the difference one could create. The boy had shown him that, and as Denki left the mock city, his mind buzzed not with electricity, but with thoughts of the hero he wanted to become, a hero defined by actions, not just words. The ground trembled as the zero-pointer made its colossal entrance, its towering form casting a long shadow over the mock city. The air was filled with the sound of its mechanical joints moving in heavy, deliberate steps, each one a thunderous declaration of its presence. Panic rippled through the crowd of examinees as they took in the sheer size of the behemoth. It was a leviathan of steel, a giant among the robots they had been facing. The realization hit them all at once: there was no point in engaging this monstrosity. The rules were clear. No points would be awarded for taking it down, and the very idea of defeating it seemed beyond the realm of possibility. As if on cue, the students turned and ran, their earlier bravado dissolving into a primal instinct for self-preservation. The mock city became a maze of fleeing figures, each one desperate to put as much distance between themselves and the zero-pointer as possible. But amidst the chaos, one figure stood still. Izuku Gojo, the white-haired enigma who had dominated the practical exam thus far, watched the zero-pointer with an analytical gaze. Where others saw an insurmountable obstacle, he saw a challenge, a test not just of strength, but of courage and resolve. Help. There was a girl stuck under a broken wall. Achako. The robot would crush her any moment. The zero-pointer was a trial, a mountain to be scaled not for points, but for the sake of the climb itself. And as Izuku weighed his options, the eyes of his peers upon him, he knew that this was a defining moment. To run would be easy, but to stand and face the impossible, that was the mark of a true hero. The decision was made in an instant, and Izuku Gojo floated forward, not away from the zero-pointer, but towards it. His movements were calm, purposeful, as he prepared to do what no one else dared, to face the giant head-on, and in doing so, to set himself apart from the rest. The zero-pointer loomed large, but so too did the legend of Izuku Gojo, the boy who would be the hero. Izuku Gojo's stance was unwavering as he faced the mechanical colossus that loomed before him. The zero-pointer, a behemoth of technology and raw power, stood as the ultimate test of his abilities. Around him, the air was thick with fear and awe, but Izuku's focus was unbreakable. His hands began to move, not with haste, but with the deliberate grace of a seasoned artist. His fingers traced the air, each motion deliberate, as if he were pulling invisible strings tied to the fabric of reality. They curled into intricate forms, weaving patterns that hummed with the energy of reversal red and amplify blue. The dance of his hands was hypnotic, fingers intertwining, then parting, palms rotating inwards and then outwards, as if he were molding the very essence of his power. His right hand spiraled upward, drawing the force of destruction into its path, while his left hand swept downward, gathering the energy of creation. But the sudden clasp, his hands came together, palms meeting in a silent clap that seemed to resonate with the heartbeat of the universe. He pulled them apart, and between them, a sphere of pulsating energy grew, its core a swirling maelstrom of indigo light. "Hollow purple," Izuku intoned, his voice steady, his eyes alight with the fire of his will. He thrust his hands forward, palms outward, fingers splayed wide. The sphere of energy surged forth, expanding into a beam of pure, annihilating force. The zero-pointer, for all its might, could not withstand the fury of Izuku's attack. The beam struck true, and the robot was consumed by the hollow purple, its form disintegrating, erased from existence as if it had never been. The onlookers, who had moments ago been scrambling for safety, now stood rooted to the spot, their eyes wide, their minds struggling to grasp the spectacle they had just witnessed. Izuku Gojo, the enigmatic prodigy, had achieved the unthinkable. He had faced down the embodiment of impossibility and emerged victorious. In the silence that followed, there was a sense of something shifting, a new legend taking root in the hearts and minds of all who had seen. Izuku Gojo was no longer just another hopeful, he was the hero who had conquered the unconquerable, a beacon of what it meant to be truly powerful. In the observation room, high above the mock city where the practical exam had unfolded, the teachers of UA High School stood in stunned silence. The spectacle of Izuku Gojo's power had left them awestruck, each one grappling with the implications of what they had just witnessed. The room, usually abuzz with commentary and critique, was quiet, the air heavy with a sense of wonder. The teachers, seasoned heroes in their own right, were no strangers to displays of power, but this was something else, something beyond their expectations. It was Namuri Kayama, known as Midnight, who finally broke the silence. Her voice, usually sultry and compassed, carried a note of disbelief. "Did you all see that?" she asked, her eyes wide behind her mask. "That power, it's unlike anything I've seen from a student before." Her colleagues nodded, murmurs of agreement passing between them. Shota Aizawa, known as Eraserhead, adjusted his goggles, his gaze still fixed on the now empty field where the zero-pointer had stood moments before. "He's not just strong," he said, his voice low and thoughtful. "He's on a completely different level." Ashinori Yagi, the former All Might, stood with his arms crossed, a rare look of astonishment etched across his features. "Young Gojo," he mused, "has just redefined what it means to be a hero in training. That technique hollow purple, it's as if he's tapped into something fundamental, something primal." The room buzzed with a new energy as the teachers began to discuss amongst themselves, their professional curiosity piqued. They speculated on Izuku's potential, on how he could be guided and taught, on the hero he might one day become. And as they watched the replay of Izuku's final, defining moment, they knew that UA High had just gained a student who would not only challenge the limits of their teaching, but who would also inspire them to reach new heights in their own heroism. Izuku Gojo, the white-haired enigma, had not only passed the practical exam, he had left an indelible mark on the very soul of UA High. And for the teachers observing from above, it was clear that this was the beginning of a new chapter, both for Izuku and for the school itself. Izuku pulled out a small projector from the envelope. He pressed the button after placing it on his table. The colossal image of All Might emerged. "Behold, for I am here as a recording." The man's voice boomed, his signature grin audible in every syllable. "Young me Gojo. May fortune favor you as you unravel this message. Pray tell, what quest has led me to the distant shores of the UA? A noble cause, indeed. For I have taken up the mantle of mentor within these hallowed halls. And the catalyst for this journey? You." The hand, bold and unwavering, sliced through the air, and the mighty All Might nodded in solemn agreement. "Mark my words, young Gojo, each year a legion of hopefuls besiege the gates of UA, yet only the steadfast emerge victorious. Those who triumph over the daunting trials are etched into the annals of legend. And you, young Gojo, have etched your name with a quill of excellence, securing a perfect tally in the written challenge, a feat of such magnitude that it heralds your ascension to UA. Izuku's smirk unfurled like a banner in the wind. An exam, they said. A mere trifle, a confection easily savored. Yet, the path to glory demands a score of 30 marks to tread the hallowed hero course. Your score, All Might's grin unfurled, vast as the horizon. A staggering 143 villain points. A pinnacle never before scaled. I salute you. Young champion. Izuku bowed, his grin a mirror to the triumph within. But the saga does not conclude here. All Might pressed on, and Izuku's frown was a shadow passing. What secrets lingered? While legions were ensnared in the clash against iron behemoths, you, singular in your compassion, extended a hand to friend and foe alike. In doing so, you embodied the essence of a hero. Not in pursuit of self, but in the selfless embrace of others. Izuku's grin rekindled, the pieces falling into place. Young Izuku, in recognition of your valiant spirit, the council has bestowed upon you 166 rescue points, a beacon that will illuminate the path for generations to come. A milestone unyielding, an inspiration eternal. All Might trembled, not with fear, but with unbridled elation. Young Gojo, with a score of 309, you stand atop the summit of the hero course of UA. You are indeed the chosen, the honored one. Izuku smiled sadly. Welcome to UA, for this is your odyssey, your hero academia. The moment the hologram flickered out, Izuku was already zipping through space-time, landing in the sterile quiet of the hospital room where his mom, Inko, lay. The steady beeps of the machines and her soft breaths filled the air, a quiet symphony of life hanging by a thread. Izuku edged closer, his fingers intertwining with hers, a gentle anchor in the storm. I made a promise to a buddy to keep an eye on you. Been doing that forever, haven't I? His voice was a whisper, a tender murmur in the silence. Inko lay motionless, a still portrait of peace. But here's the thing, even with all my strength, I can't seem to make things right. I ain't the honored one. That kid from Satoru Gozo's past, with his megawatt smile and sparkly eyes, he had his time. I always thought maybe, just maybe, I'd stand beside him a bit longer. But that's not my story. I'm here with you, and this time, I'm gonna be the hero you need. All for one's going down. That piece of you he snatched away, I'm bringing it back. That's my vow, Mom. He lingered, a silent guardian, for a heartbeat more before vanishing into the shadows. If only he'd stayed a tick longer, he would have caught the single tear that traced a path down Inko's cheek. Ichako washed her face before looking at the mirror. The exam was really hard. The written test was tough, but the practical exam was a disaster. She barely passed, with 39 points. Thank God. Otherwise, how would she support her parents? But support comes later. How are you supposed to help someone else when you are about to die? Really? That day, that moment, she really thought that she was about to die. That gigantic robot and its humongous foot, she was about to be crushed like a bug. For a moment, she had flashbacks of her life. Her birth, her infancy, childhood, family, school. Memories that she had. But, here she is. Alive. Thanks to Izuku Gojo. When she saw him floating like a magician and moving his hands like a musician, she actually thought he was mocking her. Although she couldn't help but agree that it was a beautiful sight. The next thing she noticed was a blinding purple light engulfing the area, and when the light died down, she found herself in the boy's arms. Ichako blushed. Those glowing eyes were majestic. Truly. You okay, Missy? He had asked. She had just dumbly noted before asking, the 0-pointer. He had chuckled before asking, what 0-pointer? She had once again dumbly pointed at the spot where it was or was supposed to be. Now it's gone. But where? Izuku winked at her before the girl found herself on the ground. The boy was gone. Ichako blushed harder. God, that boy is a. Iida was a serious man. He was always straight to business. He firmly believed in rules and regulations. He believed that adhering to them would grant him what he wanted. However, that day, a boy, no older than him, proved him wrong. Very wrong. Iida thought that since it was an exam, everyone was your opponent and you must not help them. It would be a safe place and no one would get hurt since it was not a real battle. But no, it was. Against yourself. Iida was silently judging the boy for his foolishness for helping other people. What an idiot he had thought. It turned out, Iida himself was the idiot. Iida was in the 7th place with 63 points. That boy almost 5 times more than him, 309 points, both villain and rescue points. Now, Iida has a goal. Surpass Izuku Gojo. Sui Asui was really impressed by herself. She scored 70 points. That's really higher than her expectations. But when she saw the top score she nearly fainted. 309 points. Then she read the name and it clicked. Oh. That boy. She should keep an eye on him. That boy might be a narcissist. but he is a milestone she wants to come close to. In the quiet of his chamber, Mineta lay still upon his bed, his gaze fixed upon the expanse of the ceiling. Moments prior, a missive of acceptance had arrived from Yue, its words absorbed by none other than the enigmatic Midnight. Her voice, her grace, captivated him so. It seemed as if she. But alas, his triumph was tempered by his modest achievement. 17 villain points, 15 rescue points, a far cry from the pinnacle. 309 points, a towering score that dwarfed his own. Recollections flooded Mineta's mind, visions of a hero in action, saving a girl with effortless grace. Everyone's eyes, especially girls' eyes upon him, admiration and longing intertwined. He knew that look well. The look he wanted to get. If only I could be in his shoes. Yet, reality tethered him to the ground. It was naught but a fanciful dream. Now, a chance to carve his own legend beckoned. No longer would he cower in the shadows of another. With resolve, he vowed to seize the spotlight, to become the hero of hearts, leaving an indelible mark upon history. For Mineta was destined to be the most irresistible and the most seductive hero the world had ever known. Bakugo was not having a good time. Firstly, he could not achieve a 3-digit mark in the practical exam. He got 99. Secondly, he was second, not first. Thirdly, the bastard that beat him by 210 numbers was a ghost. Literally. One might wonder how come a child like him has such information. The boy has been searching for his friend for a long time. So he knows a thing or two about information gathering. According to the research he did, Izuku Gojo is a distant relative of the #1 hero All Might. From manifestation of human emotions negative once what he could learn about the Gojo family is pretty mysterious, hell downright terrifying. 300 years ago, there was a huge disaster in the world. Cursed spirits wreaking havoc upon the world. These cursed spirits were the manifestation of humans' negative emotions. There was a dangerous event being organized by a cursed energy user. This event was called the Culling Game. The details of this game is strictly hidden, but according to some rumors and some photos from that time, it is pretty clear that whatever happened was nothing pretty at all. However, a group of people emerged and they saved the world. They were known as Jujutsu sorcerers. There were 2 people that had a certain surname. Satoru Gojo. Tenen Gojo. Gojo. Itsuki found that the man could power an entire country all by himself. Perhaps he had some kind of electric ability. It is said that the man could also single-handedly put down an entire nation. Truly horrifying. According to some urban legends, Tenen Gojo, or better known as Naruto, was seen doing something that was never meant to be done. He had eyes that could pierce the heavens, powers beyond human capacity. Itsuki Bakugo discovered that most of these rumors were probably rumors. However, they did have one thing in common. Tenen Gojo is the progenitor of Quirk. That's something even the historians do not argue about, they agree on it. The most interesting fact of his research is that Izuku Gojo might be a direct descendant of that man. Which means that the boy might have the same potential as his ancestor. Bakugo could not find anything about the boy's parents. No birth certificate, no birthplace, no close blood relatives. Hell, the boy did not even go to a school. Did he? Nothing about his personal life. Either everything was kept in very secrecy or the boy did not even exist before a certain time. What if he is? Nah. Anyways, Izuku's quirk was listed as Jujutsu. Izuku Gojo, I'll have to keep an eye on him. He is no pushover. He is definitely worthy of being my rival. If I can surpass him, finding Satoru will not be a difficult task. Vowed Bakugo. I will find you, Satoru. Izuku pulled out a small projector from the envelope. He pressed the button after placing it on his table. The colossal image of All Might emerged. Behold, for I am here as a recording. The man's voice boomed, his signature grin audible in every syllable. Young me Gojo. May fortune favor you as you unravel this message. Pray tell, what quest has led me to the distant shores of the UA? A noble cause, indeed. For I have taken up the mantle of mentor within these hallowed halls. And the catalyst for this journey. You. The hand, bold and unwavering, sliced through the air, and the mighty All Might nodded in solemn agreement. Mark my words, young Gojo, each year a legion of hopefuls besiege the gates of UA, yet only the steadfast emerge victorious. Those who triumph over the daunting trials are etched into the annals of legend. And you, young Gojo, have etched your name with a quill of excellence, securing a perfect tally in the written challenge, a feat of such magnitude that it heralds your ascension to UA. Izuku's smirk unfurled like a banner in the wind. An exam, they said. A mere trifle, a confection easily savored. Yet, the path to glory demands a score of 30 marks to tread the hallowed hero course. Your score, All Might's grin unfurled, vast as the horizon. A staggering 143 villain points. A pinnacle never before scaled. I salute you. Young champion. Izuku bowed, his grin a mirror to the triumph within. But the saga does not conclude here. All Might pressed on, and Izuku's frown was a shadow passing. What secrets lingered? While legions were ensnared in the clash against iron behemoths, you singular in your compassion extended a hand to friend and foe alike. In doing so, you embodied the essence of a hero. Not in pursuit of self, but in the selfless embrace of others. Izuku's grin rekindled, the pieces falling into place. Young Izuku, in recognition of your valiant spirit, the council has bestowed upon you 166 rescue points, a beacon that will illuminate the path for generations to come. A milestone unyielding, an inspiration eternal. All Might trembled, not with fear, but with unbridled elation. Young Gojo, with a score of 309, you stand atop the summit of the hero course of UA. You are indeed the chosen, the honored one. Izuku smiled sadly. Welcome to UA, for this is your odyssey, your hero academia. The moment the hologram flickered out, Izuku was already zipping through space-time, landing in the sterile quiet of the hospital room where his mom, Inko, lay. The steady beeps of the machines and her soft breaths filled the air, a quiet symphony of life hanging by a thread. Izuku edged closer, his fingers intertwining with hers, a gentle anchor in the storm. I made a promise to a buddy to keep an eye on you. Been doing that forever, haven't I? His voice was a whisper, a tender murmur in the silence. Inko lay motionless, a still portrait of peace. But here's the thing, even with all my strength, I can't seem to make things right. I ain't the honored one. That kid from Satoru Gozo's past, with his megawatt smile and sparkly eyes, he had his time. I always thought maybe just maybe, I'd stand beside him a bit longer. But that's not my story. I'm here with you, and this time, I'm gonna be the hero you need. All for one's going down. That piece of you he snatched away, I'm bringing it back. That's my vow, Mom. He lingered, a silent guardian, for a heartbeat more before vanishing into the shadows. If only he'd stayed a tick longer, he would have caught the single tear that traced a path down Inko's cheek. Ichako washed her face before looking at the mirror. The exam was really hard. The written test was tough, but the practical exam was a disaster. She barely passed, with 39 points. Thank God. Otherwise, how would she support her parents? But support comes later. How are you supposed to help someone else when you are about to die? Really? That day, that moment, she really thought that she was about to die. That gigantic robot and its humongous foot, she was about to be crushed like a bug. For a moment, she had flashbacks of her life. Her birth, her infancy, childhood, family, school. Memories that she had. But, here she is. Alive. Thanks to Izuku Gojo. When she saw him floating like a magician and moving his hands like a musician, she actually thought he was mocking her. Although she couldn't help but agree that it was a beautiful sight. The next thing she noticed was a blinding purple light engulfing the area, and when the light died down, she found herself in the boy's arms. Ichako blushed. Those glowing eyes were majestic. Truly. You okay, Missy? He had asked. She had just dumbly noted before asking, the 0-pointer. He had chuckled before asking, what 0-pointer? She had once again dumbly pointed at the spot where it was or was supposed to be. Now it's gone. But where? Izuku winked at her before the girl found herself on the ground. The boy was gone. Ichako blushed harder. God, that boy is a. Iida was a serious man. He was always straight to business. He firmly believed in rules and regulations. He believed that adhering to them would grant him what he wanted. However, that day, a boy, no older than him, proved him wrong. Very wrong. Iida thought that since it was an exam, everyone was your opponent and you must not help them. It would be a safe place and no one would get hurt since it was not a real battle. But no, it was. Against yourself. Iida was silently judging the boy for his foolishness for helping other people. What an idiot he had thought. It turned out, Iida himself was the idiot. Iida was in the 7th place with 63 points. That boy almost 5 times more than him, 309 points, both villain and rescue points. Now, Iida has a goal. Surpass Izuku Gojo. Sui Asui was really impressed by herself. She scored 70 points. That's really higher than her expectations. But when she saw the top score she nearly fainted. 309 points. Then she read the name and it clicked. Oh. That boy. She should keep an eye on him. That boy might be a narcissist. But he is a milestone she wants to come close to. In the quiet of his chamber, Mineta lay still upon his bed, his gaze fixed upon the expanse of the ceiling. Moments prior, a missive of acceptance had arrived from UA, its words absorbed by none other than the enigmatic Midnight. Her voice, her grace, captivated him so. It seemed as if she. But alas, his triumph was tempered by his modest achievement. 17 villain points, 15 rescue points, a far cry from the pinnacle. 309 points, a towering score that dwarfed his own. Recollections flooded Mineta's mind, visions of a hero in action, saving a girl with effortless grace. Everyone's eyes, especially girls' eyes upon him, admiration and longing intertwined. He knew that look well. The look he wanted to get. If only I could be in his shoes. Yet, reality tethered him to the ground. It was naught but a fanciful dream. Now, a chance to carve his own legend beckoned. No longer would he cower in the shadows of another. With resolve, he vowed to seize the spotlight, to become the hero of hearts, leaving an indelible mark upon history. Mineta was destined to be the most irresistible and the most seductive hero the world had ever known. Bakugo was not having a good time. Firstly, he could not achieve a 3-digit mark in the practical exam. He got 99. Secondly, he was second not first. Thirdly, the bastard that beat him by 210 numbers was a ghost. Literally. One might wonder how come a child like him has such information. The boy has been searching for his friend for a long time. So he knows a thing or two about information gathering. According to the research he did, Izuku Gojo is a distant relative of the number 1 hero All Might. From manifestation of human emotions negative once what he could learn about the Gojo family is pretty mysterious hell downright terrifying. 300 years ago, there was a huge disaster in the world. Cursed spirits wreaking havoc upon the world. These cursed spirits were the manifestation of humans' negative emotions. There was a dangerous event being organized by a cursed energy user. This event was called the Culling Game. The details of this game is strictly hidden, but according to some rumors and some photos from that time, it is pretty clear that whatever happened was nothing pretty at all. However, a group of people emerged and they saved the world. They were known as Yujutsu sorcerers. There were 2 people that had a certain surname. Satoru Gojo. Tenen Gojo. Gojo. Itsuki found that the man could power an entire country all by himself. Perhaps he had some kind of electric ability. It is said that the man could also single-handedly put down an entire nation. Truly horrifying. According to some urban legends, Tenen Gojo, or better known as Naruto, was seen doing something that was never meant to be done. He had eyes that could pierce the heavens, powers beyond human capacity. Itsuki Bakugo discovered that most of these rumors were probably rumors. However, they did have one thing in common. Tenen Gojo is the progenitor of Quirk. That's something even the historians do not argue about, they agree on it. The most interesting fact of his research is that Izuku Gojo might be a direct descendant of that man. Which means that the boy might have the same potential as his ancestor. Bakugo could not find anything about the boy's parents. No birth certificate, no birthplace, no close blood relatives. Hell, the boy did not even go to school. Did he? Nothing about his personal life. Either everything was kept in very secrecy or the boy did not even exist before a certain time. What if he is? Nah. Anyways, Izuku's quirk was listed as Jujutsu. Izuku Gojo, I'll have to keep an eye on him. He is no pushover. He is definitely worthy of being my rival. If I can surpass him, finding Satoru will not be a difficult task. Vowed Bakugo. I will find you, Satoru. Sorry guys for interrupting, I am your host and you guys can see, we are so close to hitting 1K subscribers. So please subscribe to our channel. I really need your support. Now, come back to the story. Izuku Gojo strolled casually through the bustling corridors of UA High School, his new uniform crisp and his backpack slung over one shoulder. His white hair flowed smoothly, contrasting starkly against his blue round sunglasses that hid his eyes, but not his confident smirk. The other students parted as he walked by, some whispering, others just staring at the new kid who had caused such a stir during the entrance exam. Izuku's mind buzzed with excitement and a bit of nervousness, but he masked it well with his usual swagger. Reaching the door to Class 1A, he didn't hesitate. With a dramatic push, he flung the doors open and strode inside as if he owned the place. Hey guys, meet the future No. 1 hero. He declared, his voice echoing in the spacious classroom. For a moment, there was a stunned silence as every pair of eyes turned towards him. Izuku felt a trickle of sweat form on his brow, but he didn't let it show. He stood tall, basking in the attention. Then the whispers started. Is he the boy from that day? Someone near the front murmured. Yeah, Izuku Gojo or something. He broke the entrance exam record, another voice chimed in. No kidding, did you see how he just casually took down the 0-pointer? He was like hollow purple. He didn't even break a sweat. That move was insane. I heard he destroyed it with a single attack. The murmurs continued, growing louder as more students joined in. Izuku's smirk widened. He loved the attention, the awe in their voices. This was exactly what he had been aiming for. But then, his eyes landed on someone. Katsuki Bakugo. His childhood friend, though Bakugo didn't know that. They had grown up together, but circumstances had separated them, and Izuku had taken on a new identity. Satoru Midoriya was now Izuku Gojo. Bakugo's intense gaze locked onto him, eyes narrowed, analyzing. There was no recognition there, just curiosity and a hint of annoyance. Izuku ignored the stares and found a seat directly behind Bakugo. As he settled in, he noticed a tall boy with a robotic expression and glasses standing near Bakugo. The boy had been scolding Bakugo before Izuku's grand entrance, but now his attention shifted to the newcomer. The boy with glasses adjusted them with a precise movement, then walked over to Izuku. "Hello, I am Tenen. I apologize for having bad thoughts about you in the entrance exam," he said with a slight bow. "I misjudged the situation during the entrance exam. I thought helping others would be foolish, but it turns out I was the one who was mistaken." Izuku raised an eyebrow, slightly taken aback by the formal apology. "No worries, Iida," he replied, waving his hand dismissively. "We all make mistakes. The important thing is to learn from them, right?" Iida nodded, looking somewhat relieved. "Yes, indeed. Thank you for understanding." As Iida returned to his seat, the murmurs in the classroom began to die down, but the atmosphere remained charged with curiosity and excitement. Izuku leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms behind his head, looking every bit as relaxed and confident as he wanted to appear. Bakugo turned around slightly, glancing at Izuku over his shoulder. "You better not get in my way, Gojo," he growled, his voice low and menacing. Izuku grinned. "Wouldn't dream of it, Blondie," he replied smoothly. "But don't be surprised if I end up surpassing you." Bakugo's eyes narrowed further, a spark of anger flashing in them. "We'll see about that. And don't call me that. Name's Katsuki Bakugo." Izuku leaned back, feeling the thrill of the moment. Bakugo's challenge echoed in his ears, but there was one thing he couldn't let slide. Leaning forward, he tapped Bakugo on the shoulder. "It's Gojo, not Gojo," he corrected with a smirk. "Get it right if you're going to be competing with me." Bakugo's eyes flared with irritation, but he didn't get a chance to retort. The classroom door creaked open, and a girl with short brown hair and a bright earnest expression stepped in. Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on Izuku. A wide smile spread across her face as she hurried over to him. "Hey. Gozo-san. You saved me during the entrance exam," she exclaimed, her voice filled with gratitude. She stopped in front of his desk, her hands clasped together in front of her chest. "Thank you so much. I don't know what I would have done without you." Izuku's confident facade softened slightly. He remembered her now, the girl trapped under the rubble, the panic in her eyes until he had stepped in. "No problem," he said, shrugging as if it were nothing. "Just doing what any future hero would do." The girl blushed slightly, her admiration clear, extending a hand. "It's nice to know that you are a classmate." "Same here," he replied, shaking her hand firmly. As they exchanged pleasantries, the rest of the class watched with interest. Some of the whispers started up again, this time more approving. "That's the girl he saved, right? Yeah, I heard he was incredible during the exam." Izuku couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. He'd come here to make an impression, and it was clear he had succeeded. Just then, the door creaked open again, and the classroom was engulfed in a stunned silence. A caterpillar-like figure appeared at the entrance, inching its way inside. It was a bizarre sight, and everyone stared in bewilderment. "What the heck is that?" someone whispered from the back. "Is that a failed lab test subject?" another student murmured, eyes wide with confusion. "Is this some kind of hero test?" a voice speculated. The whispers grew louder as the caterpillar moved further into the room. Suddenly, a zip down the middle of the creature opened, and a man with tired, half-lidded eyes stepped out. "Good morning," he said, his voice carrying a hint of irritation. "I'm your homeroom teacher Shota Aizawa, and I am disappointed in you all for not noticing me earlier." The room fell silent, the students exchanging nervous glances. "You took 10 seconds to settle down after I entered," Aizawa continued, his gaze sweeping across the room. "That's also disappointing. As aspiring heroes, you need to be more aware of your surroundings and ready to act immediately." Aizawa reached into the caterpillar suit and pulled out a stack of gym uniforms. Without warning, he tossed one directly at Izuku, who caught it with ease, though he couldn't hide his surprise. "You," Aizawa said, pointing at Izuku. "And the rest of you meet at the training ground in 10 minutes after changing into these gym uniforms." The students scrambled to catch the uniforms as Aizawa threw them, each one more eager than the last to prove they could meet his expectations. Izuku glanced at his new uniform, then back at Aizawa, who was already turning to leave. Ichako, seated nearby, leaned over and whispered, "I guess this is how UA keeps us on our toes." Izuku nodded, a grin spreading across his face. "Yeah, and I'm ready for whatever they throw at us." Bakugo, overhearing their exchange, scoffed. "Don't get too cocky, Gozo." Izuku just smirked in response. "Wouldn't dream of it, Bakugo. See you out there." The students of Class 1A gathered at the training ground, the air thick with anticipation and a hint of nervousness. Aizawa stood before them, his expression as unreadable as ever. He let the silence hang for a moment, ensuring he had everyone's full attention before he spoke. "Today, we will be conducting a quirk assessment test," Aizawa announced, his voice carrying authority. "This test will determine your abilities and where you stand among your peers. Let me make one thing clear. If you come in last, I have the power to expel you from this school. And I will do it." A murmur of shock rippled through the students. Expelled. On the first day. The pressure was immediate and intense. "For the first test," Aizawa continued, "we will be doing a ball throw. You'll use your quirks to see how far you can throw this ball. No stepping out of the circle." He picked up a metallic ball and tossed it to Izuku. "Gojo, how far could you throw this ball in middle school without using your powers?" Izuku caught the ball effortlessly, his blue sunglasses glinting in the sunlight. "I didn't go to a normal school," he replied, his smile gone for a moment. "There was no ball throwing test. There was only honing this body and fighting people all the time." Aizawa raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "Fine. Then throw it now, with all your power, but do not leave the circle." Izuku stepped into the circle, his overconfidence on full display. He turned the ball over in his hand, feeling the weight of it. The rest of the class watched in anticipation. Izuku smirked, his mind racing with possibilities. This was his moment to shine, to prove his worth right from the start. As Izuku confidently stepped into the circle, preparing to demonstrate the extent of his power, his mind raced through the intricate mechanics of his curse technique, Limitless. With a smirk beneath his blue sunglasses, he tapped into the fundamental principles of spatial manipulation and energy control, honed through years of training and experimentation. As he grasped the metallic ball in his hand, he visualized the intricate dance of negative points and singularities, envisioning the convergence of infinite series that would propel the ball beyond conventional limits. With a swift motion, he released the ball, simultaneously channeling his quirk's power into the space between himself and the object. The air around him seemed to warp and bend as Izuku's quirk took hold, reducing the distance between the designated negative points to infinitesimal levels. This induced an exponential acceleration, akin to the gravitational pull near a black hole's event horizon, as the ball plummeted into the depths of manipulated space. Simultaneously, Izuku infused the ball with additional energy, amplifying its kinetic force beyond what was physically possible. The combination of spatial manipulation and energy control created a perfect storm of propulsion, propelling the ball with unprecedented speed and force. A flash, then there was a moment of silence before there was a loud boom. The ground shook for a moment. Those with long hair had been left with mesdy and untamed hair due to the air pressure and sheer force behind it. As the ball soared through the air, leaving a trail of shimmering energy in its wake, the handheld counter machine in Aizawa's hands beeped incessantly, struggling to comprehend the magnitude of the force unleashed by Izuku's quirk. The numbers climbed higher and higher until they could no longer be contained within the confines of finite measurement, finally displaying the symbol of infinity. Infinity. Aizawa was shocked, although he concealed it masterfully. Not even 13 could do it. The students of Class 1A stood transfixed, their eyes wide with wonder and disbelief. The sheer magnitude of Izuku's demonstration left them speechless, their minds struggling to comprehend the scientific marvel unfolding before their eyes. With a satisfied grin, Izuku turned to face his classmates, his confidence unshaken. Whispers of awe and admiration echoed across the training ground, mingling with the sound of the beeping counter machine, struggling to quantify the limitless power unleashed by Izuku's quirk. Some exchanged incredulous glances, their respect for Izuku's abilities growing with each passing moment. Among the crowd, Bakugo and Todoroki stood, their expressions a mix of shock, envy, and begrudging respect. Bakugo's jaw clenched, his competitive spirit ignited by the undeniable display of power before him. He couldn't deny the impressive feat Izuku had just accomplished, but it only fueled his determination to surpass him. Todoroki, usually composed and aloof, found himself equally stunned by Izuku's demonstration. The sheer control and mastery of his quirk were unlike anything he had ever witnessed. Despite his stoic demeanor, a flicker of uncertainty crossed Todoroki's features as he contemplated the implications of Izuku's unparalleled abilities. As the test continued, the weight of Izuku's demonstration lingered in the air, casting a shadow over the rest of the assessments. Bakugo and Todoroki couldn't shake the feeling of inadequacy, their minds consumed by thoughts of how they could possibly measure up to such a formidable opponent. The students of Class 1A stepped up one by one, eager to demonstrate their quirks and prove their worth as future heroes. Achako Uraraka, with her zero-gravity quirk, displayed remarkable finesse, effortlessly launching the ball in the infinity. Tenya Iida, fueled by his engine quirk, propelled the ball with incredible speed and precision, leaving a streak of motion in his wake. Momoyaoi Rosu's creation quirk proved invaluable as she fashioned a makeshift catapult, launching the ball with impressive force born of her strategic mind. Ijiro Kirishima's hardening quirk allowed him to send the ball ricocheting off his hardened palms with formidable strength, a testament to his unwavering resolve. Sayu Asui, with her frog quirk, leapt gracefully into the air, sending the ball sailing through the sky with the powerful muscles of her amphibious legs. Denki Kaminari's electrification quirk crackled with energy as he unleashed a surge of electricity, electrifying the ball and propelling it with a dazzling display of power. Shoto Todoroki's half-hot half-cold quirk created a powerful blast of ice, propelling the ball with unparalleled force as he showcased the full extent of his abilities. Katsuki Bakugo, true to his explosive nature, utilized his explosion quirk to launch the ball with a deafening blast, leaving a trail of smoke and echoes in his wake. Next was the one-on-one race. The tension crackled in the air as Izuku and Bakugo faced off in the one-on-one 50-meter race, their classmates lining the track, anticipation hanging thick like a fog. With a confident smirk, Izuku adjusted his blue sunglasses, his white hair gleaming in the sunlight as he prepared to showcase his speed and agility. As the starting signal rang out, Izuku exploded off the starting line with lightning-fast reflexes, his limitless quirk propelling him forward with unmatched velocity. With each stride, he effortlessly closed the distance between himself and the finish line, his movements fluid and precise. Meanwhile, Bakugo surged forward with explosive bursts of energy, his fiery determination driving him to push himself to the limit. But despite his formidable speed and power, he found himself unable to match Izuku's effortless grace and agility. With a burst of speed that seemed almost supernatural, Izuku surged past the finish line in less than a fraction of a second, leaving Bakugo trailing behind in his wake. The crowd erupted into cheers and applause as Izuku's victory became apparent, his classmates marveling at the sheer speed and precision of his performance. As Izuku basked in the glow of his triumph, Bakugo's frustration boiled over, his expression contorted in a mixture of anger and disbelief. He had given it his all, pushing himself to the brink, yet he still found himself bested by Izuku's seemingly unstoppable abilities. With a clenched jaw and narrowed eyes, Bakugo watched as Izuku celebrated his victory, his competitive spirit burning brighter than ever. He knew that he would have to redouble his efforts if he ever hoped to surpass Izuku and claim the title of the #1 hero. But for now, he could do nothing but seethe with frustration and determination, vowing to one day rise to the challenge and claim victory for himself. Others displayed the unique abilities of their powers. As the students of Class 1A gathered around the grip test machine, Izuku approached with a thoughtful expression, his mind already racing with possibilities. While his classmates prepared to showcase their physical strength, Izuku saw an opportunity to demonstrate the power of his limitless quirk in a different light. With a focused gaze, Izuku extended his hand towards the machine, his blue sunglasses hiding the intensity of his concentration. Drawing upon the principles of physics and spatial manipulation inherent in his curse technique, he began to analyze the structure of the machine, identifying its weak points and vulnerabilities. With a precise application of his quirk, Izuku manipulated the space around the machine, subtly altering its molecular structure and weakening its integrity. As he gently applied pressure to the handle, the machine groaned under the strain, unable to withstand the invisible force exerted by Izuku's power. The gauge on the machine flickered uncertainly before finally shattering into pieces, unable to register the magnitude of the force unleashed by Izuku's limitless. The display screen blinked erratically, unable to comprehend the scientific marvel unfolding before it. As the dust settled and the results were tallied, Izuku's classmates watched in awe, their murmurs of disbelief echoing across the training ground. While some may have expected Izuku to rely solely on physical strength, his ingenious use of physics and spatial manipulation had once again set him apart from the crowd. Among the students, there were whispers of admiration and curiosity as they marveled at Izuku's ability to think outside the box and approach challenges from a different perspective. Even Bakugo, though he may have been frustrated by Izuku's unconventional methods, couldn't deny the brilliance of his classmates' approach. Among the students, there were others who came close to matching Izuku's impressive feat. Mina Ishido, with her acid quirk, demonstrated surprising strength as she squeezed the handle with a grip that left imprints in the metal. Her classmates cheered her on, impressed by her unexpected power. But it was the boy with 6 limbs, Mizo Shoji, who truly stole the show. With his dupli arms quirk, he extended his multiple limbs to grip the handle from all angles, applying pressure with a force that rivaled Izuku's own. The machine groaned under the strain before finally giving way, the gauge soaring to unprecedented heights. As the grip test concluded, the students shifted their focus to the next challenge. The repeated side steps. This time, it was a chance for agility and speed to shine, and the students eagerly lined up to take their turn. Among them was Mineta, his signature purple hair bouncing with each step, his demeanor oozing with confidence as he stepped onto the designated area. "Watch and learn, everyone," he declared, his voice dripping with With a smirk, Mineta began to perform the side steps with remarkable precision and speed, his agility and coordination on full display. "Ha! Not bad, huh?" he exclaimed, his grin widening as he effortlessly navigated the course. However, as Mineta's performance continued, his commentary took a turn that left his classmates feeling uneasy. "Hey, ladies, check out these moves. You're looking at the future #1 hero right here," he called out, his remarks laced with innuendo. Whispers and murmurs broke out among the female students, their discomfort palpable. Did he really just say that? Ugh, he's so creepy. I wish he'd just focus on the test. Despite his skill and agility, Mineta's behavior soured the mood, and no one felt inclined to praise him for his performance. Instead, there was a collective sense of unease and discomfort, with many of the girls exchanging wary glances and shifting uncomfortably on their feet. As Mineta finished his run and stepped off the course, he looked around expectantly, awaiting the praise and admiration he believed he deserved. But to his surprise and dismay, the only response he received was a lukewarm acknowledgement from his classmates, their expressions guarded and unimpressed. Nice job, I guess," one of his classmates with earlobes muttered half-heartedly, her discomfort evident in her voice. Though he may have excelled in the challenge, Mineta's lack of awareness and respect for his peers left a sour taste in their mouths. And as the next student stepped up to take their turn, the focus shifted away from Mineta, his moment in the spotlight overshadowed by his own inappropriate behavior. Finally, the tests were over and it was time for the results. As the digital board displayed the rankings, tension filled the room. Each student held their breath, eyes glued to the screen, anxiously awaiting their fate. 1. Izuku Gojo. 2. Katsuki Bakugo. 3. Shoto Todoroki. 4. Momoyaoi Rozu. 5. Tenya Ida. And so on. Relief washed over some, while others couldn't hide their disappointment. For Mineta and Hagakure, the news was especially nerve-wracking as they found themselves at the bottom of the list. Mineta's usual jovial face was downcast, and Hagakure's invisible form seemed to radiate anxiety. Aizawa stepped forward, his expression as impassive as ever, adding to the tension in the room. "The test results are clear. You've all given it your best. But remember what I said at the beginning of this exercise. Those who come last will be expelled." Asps echoed around the room. Mineta and Hagakure's faces fell further, and a few of their classmates exchanged worried glances. Just when it seemed like the worst was about to happen, Aizawa dropped a bombshell. "Or at least, that's what I wanted you to believe." Confusion swept through the room, followed by a collective sigh of relief. Mineta and Hagakure's expressions morphed from despair to confusion, and the tension in the room lifted. "You see, it was a logical ruse to make sure you all pushed yourselves to your limits," Aizawa explained, his tone matter of fact. The students were left dumbfounded by the revelation. Ida, ever the stickler for rules, stepped forward to voice his concern. Aizawa shrugged off the critique, unfazed by the disapproval. "In the world of heroes, you won't always get a warning. This was a lesson in dealing with unexpected stress," Aizawa said, his words carrying weight. Mineta and Hagakure let out deep sighs of relief, their shoulders visibly relaxing. Hagakure laughed in relief, while Mineta grinned, relieved that his time at UA wasn't coming to an abrupt end. Aizawa waved off their gratitude. "Don't thank me. Just remember this feeling and let it drive you to improve." Dismissed. With that, the students filed out of the room, their minds buzzing with the realization that in the world of heroes, unexpected challenges were just part of the job. As the day drew to a close and the test concluded, Izuku found himself lost in thought, mulling over the whirlwind of events that had transpired. The adrenaline of the day's challenges had finally begun to wane, replaced by a heavy sense of contemplation. His mind wandered back to the pivotal conversation he had with All Might the previous night, a discussion that had left him both shaken and determined. It was late in the evening, and the city was cloaked in darkness. Izuku had been summoned to a secluded corner of UA High School, where Toshinori Yagi, the #1 hero known to the world as All Might, awaited him. The look in All Might's eyes was grave, a stark contrast to his usual boisterous demeanor. "Young Midoriya," Toshinori began, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. "You are intimately aware of the fact how nursery treats their recruits." Izuku, or rather Satoru, remained silent. Memories of his time at nursery flooded his mind, the harsh training, the relentless drills, and the endless experiments. He had been tortured there for years, subjected to inhumane treatment in the name of becoming stronger. "There is a reason why they go so far in their training methods," All Might continued, his tone carefully measured. "A detective friend of mine has been investigating the organization deeply. There have been some troublesome discoveries." Izuku raised an eyebrow, his Rikugen gleaming with curiosity and a hint of dread. The idea that there was more to nursery than he had known was both unsettling and intriguing. "They were not just training you," All Might revealed, his eyes locking onto Izuku's. "They were harvesting you and everyone they had." Izuku felt a chill run down his spine. Harvesting us? What do you mean? All Might took a deep breath, his expression somber. We believe that All for One is alive because they were harvesting powers. Izuku's eyes widened in disbelief. But I killed him. I was sure of it. No, he is definitely alive, All Might interrupted gently but firmly. We have reason to believe that he has been orchestrating these events from the shadows, continuing his twisted experiments and gathering strength. Izuku's mind raced as he tried to process this revelation. So that means everything I went through at nursery, all the pain and suffering, it was all part of his plan. Yes, All Might confirmed, his voice heavy with regret. And there's more. Your mother's piece of consciousness, probably. Izuku's heart skipped a beat. She can be saved. Lost in his thoughts, Izuku was startled when he heard his name called from behind. Turning around, he was greeted by the sight of Ichako and Iida, two of his classmates, approaching him with warm smiles. Hey Izuku. Ichako called out cheerfully, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. We were thinking it would be nice to walk home together since we're classmates now. Izuku's surprise quickly gave way to a genuine smile as he nodded in agreement. Yeah, that sounds great. It'll be nice to have some company on the way home. Iida nodded in approval, his glasses glinting in the fading sunlight. Indeed. It's important for classmates to support each other, both in and out of the classroom. As they walked home together, Ichako and Iida couldn't help but comment on Izuku's performance during the test. Wow, Izuku, you were incredible out there. Ichako exclaimed, her admiration evident in her voice. I mean, breaking the grip test machine and finishing first in the rankings. That's seriously impressive. Izuku chuckled, his overconfident demeanor shining through. Well, what can I say? I'm just naturally talented, he replied with a smirk, adjusting his sunglasses with a flick of his hand. Iida, ever the voice of reason, felt the need to interject. While it's important to acknowledge your strengths, Izuku, it's also important to remain humble and recognize that there's always room for improvement, he said, his tone gentle but firm. But Izuku waved off Iida's concern with a dismissive gesture. Oh, come on, Iida. Why be humble when you're as amazing as I am? He retorted, his confidence bordering on arrogance. Ichako couldn't help but giggle at Izuku's audacity, shaking her head in amusement. You really? Izuku. Always so full of yourself, she teased affectionately. Izuku grinned, taking the teasing in stride. Hey, confidence is key in the world of heroes. And besides, with a quirk as powerful as mine, it's only natural to be a little overconfident, he declared, puffing out his chest proudly. As they continued their walk, Izuku's narcissistic tendencies remained as evident as ever, his unwavering self-assurance serving as both a source of inspiration and amusement for his classmates. And while his confidence may have bordered on arrogance at times, there was no denying the undeniable charm and charisma that drew others to him, even in the face of his larger-than-life ego. Hawk had been given a new task. This one was different from the usual petty crimes and villain hunts. He had to locate and escapee a highly unstable child with a space-time quirk. This was a particularly interesting case for him. The kid had essentially killed the staff of the nursery, causing chaos with his unpredictable powers. Despite the gravity of the situation, months had passed, and Hawk hadn't found a single lead. Frustration was mounting. He was a hero known for his efficiency, but this case was testing his patience like nothing before. One late afternoon, he found himself perched atop a skyscraper, the city sprawled out below him like a vast chaotic tapestry. He took a sip of his cappuccino, savoring the rich frothy texture. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows and bathing the city in a warm golden light. The hustle and bustle of the marketplace below caught his eye. Something was off. People were gathering, voices rising in a heated commotion. Sighing, Hawk set down his cup. Here we go again, he muttered to himself. He leaped from the skyscraper, wings spreading wide as he dived gracefully toward the scene. As he landed, the source of the commotion became clear. A man with a rhinoceros quirk was arguing vehemently with a woman. Easy there, Hawk said gently, stepping between them. The man, seeing the number 3 hero, backed off a bit, his aggression cooling slightly. Hawk looked at the woman and then back at the man. What's going on here? She's been stealing from my shop. The man shouted, pointing a thick finger at the woman. His nostrils flared and his eyes were wild with anger. I did no such thing. The woman retorted, her face flushed with indignation. I was just browsing and he started accusing me out of nowhere. Hawk rubbed his temples. This was the kind of mundane hero work that grated on his nerves. Day in, day out, dealing with petty squabbles and misunderstandings. He longed for a break, a moment of peace to gather his thoughts and focus on finding the escapee. Look, Hawk said, his voice calm but firm. Let's all take a step back and breathe for a second. Sir, do you have any proof that she was stealing? The man hesitated, then shook his head. No, but she was acting suspiciously. "And you?" Hawk turned to the woman, "did you take anything from his shop?" "No," she exclaimed, her eyes pleading. "I swear, I didn't." Hawk sighed again. "Alright, how about this? Ma'am, if you're willing, can you let him check your bag? Just to clear things up." The woman nodded, handing over her bag with a huff. The man rummaged through it, finding nothing but personal belongings. He looked sheepish as he handed it back. "Okay, looks like it was just a misunderstanding," Hawk said, giving them both a stern look. "Next time, let's try to resolve things a bit more calmly, yeah?" The man nodded, his anger deflated. "Sorry," he mumbled, scratching the back of his head. The woman gave a small tight-lipped smile and turned to leave, muttering under her breath. As the crowd dispersed, Hawk took a deep breath, hoping for a moment's respite. But his hero duties were never ending. Out of the corner of his eye, he spotted a man slipping quietly into a nearby public library, carrying a bag that seemed out of place. Something about the man's hurried, furtive movement set off Hawk's instincts. "And catch a break," Hawk muttered, flexing his wings and heading toward the library. He launched himself off the skyscraper, gliding effortlessly over the bustling streets below. His keen eyes tracked the man's every move. The bag was bulky and heavy, and the way the man clutched it to his chest seemed suspicious. What's he up to? Hawk wondered aloud. Before he could reach the library, a sudden explosion rocked the air. The ground trembled beneath his feet as a thunderous boom shattered the relative peace of the city. Windows of the library burst outward, sending a rain of glass and debris flying in all directions. People in the vicinity began to scream and scatter in a blind panic, the serene cityscape transformed into a chaotic battlefield. Hawk's reflexes kicked in immediately. He darted forward, shielding a mother and her child from a shower of falling glass. "Get to safety," he yelled, guiding them towards a safer area. The acrid smell of smoke filled the air, stinging his nostrils. Chaos erupted around him as the explosion sent ripples of fear through the crowd. "Damn it," he cursed under his breath. "This isn't just some random act. It's a coordinated attack." As the lone hero on the scene, Hawk felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He dashed to pull people from the wreckage, using his wings to shield them from further harm. "This way, hurry," he shouted, his voice barely audible over the cacophony of sirens and screams. His mind raced as he assessed the situation. There were too many people and not enough time. The realization hit him hard. The earlier commotion had been a distraction. This was a terrorist attack, meticulously planned to draw attention away from the true target. Hawk's mind raced. How many people were inside the library? How many were trapped, injured, or worse? He could feel the panic rising in his chest, but he forced himself to stay focused. "Think, Kigo, think," he told himself, reverting to his real name in the moment of crisis. "You've got to save them." He wondered how many people had died in there. The thought made his stomach churn, but he pushed it aside. There was no time for hesitation. He needed to act fast. He looked around desperately for any sign of help, but it was clear he was on his own. "Where the hell are the other heroes?" he muttered, frustration bubbling up inside him. "Yo." A cheerful voice broke through the turmoil. Hawk turned to see a young boy with white hair and glowing blue eyes, partially obscured by his round blue sunglasses. He couldn't have been more than 12 or 13, and yet he stood there, seemingly unbothered by the chaos around him. His casual demeanor was at odds with the severity of the situation. "You seem troubled," the boy said, a hint of amusement in his tone. He looked around at the wreckage, his glowing eyes taking in every detail, as if he was merely observing a street performance. Hawk chuckled bitterly, shaking his head at the absurdity of it all. "Yeah, what do you think?" he replied, still scanning the area for anyone else in need of help. His voice carried an edge of exasperation that he couldn't quite hide. "There's been a damn explosion, and people are hurt. Of course, I'm troubled." "Why aren't you going inside that building to save them?" the boy asked, tilting his head slightly. His curiosity seemed genuine, almost innocent, which only added to Hawk's irritation. How could anyone be so calm right now? Hawk glanced at the inferno consuming the library. The flames were roaring, the heat intense and suffocating. He didn't question how the boy knew there were people alive inside. Those glowing eyes probably had something to do with it. "I can't," he admitted, frustration lacing his voice. "The fire's too intense. I can't risk more lives by going in there without a plan." The boy nodded thoughtfully, as if considering Hawk's words carefully. "Tell you what, I'll go rescue them, and you don't report me. Deal?" "Wait, before Hawk could finish his sentence, the boy turned and began walking towards the blazing building. Hawk's hand shot out to stop him, but the boy was quick. With a sense of urgency, Kigo called out, "Hey, kid. Stop. It's too dangerous." The boy ignored him, his pace unchanging, almost casual. Hawk watched in disbelief as the boy walked straight into the inferno. The flames seemed to part around him, creating a clear path. It was as if he commanded the fire itself, bending it to his will. "No, no, no," Hawk muttered, his mind racing. This can't be happening. People were screaming and Hawk once again engaged in helping people around the street. 2 minutes later, the place was clear. But the kid. He spotted a water tank on a small building near the burning library. He was just about to break the water supply tank to try and douse the flames when he saw silhouettes emerging from the blaze. His heart skipped a beat. Could it be? The shapes grew clearer, and soon he could see the boy leading a group of survivors out of the burning library. It was surreal. The heat that had been unbearable mere moments ago seemed to have no effect on the boy or the people he was guiding to safety. What? Hawk was left stunned, watching as the boy nonchalantly guided the survivors away from the burning building. His mind struggled to comprehend what he was seeing. How is this possible? He whispered to himself. The kid had not only walked through fire, but had saved a dozen lives in the process. Here you go, folks. The boy said, his tone as casual as if he had just helped them cross the street. The people, dazed and covered in soot, expressed their gratitude, tears of relief streaming down their faces. Who are you? An old man asked, his voice shaky with relief and disbelief. His hands trembled as he reached out to touch the boy's arm, as if to confirm he was real. The boy smiled, his blue eyes twinkling behind the sunglasses. Just a person trying to figure out who he is, he replied enigmatically. His words hung in the air, adding to the mystery surrounding him. With that, he turned and began to walk away. Before anyone could say another word, he disappeared, melting into the chaos as if he had never been there at all. The crowd murmured in confusion and awe, unsure of what to make of their savior's cryptic statement. Hawk stood there, speechless. This boy had not only walked through fire, but had saved a dozen lives in the process. Who was he? And why was he helping? Hawk's mind swirled with questions, but there were no answers in sight. Hey, are you okay? A woman's voice snapped Hawk back to reality. She was one of the survivors, a young woman with a soot-streaked face and a grateful expression. Yeah, I'm fine, Hawk replied, still trying to process what had just happened. I'm just amazed. He glanced at the library, now a smoldering ruin, and then back at the spot where the boy had disappeared. Who was that kid? He wondered aloud. Thank you for helping us, the woman said, her voice filled with genuine appreciation. And thank that boy, whoever he was. Hawk nodded, though his thoughts were elsewhere. He had a new mystery to solve now, and it was one he intended to get to the bottom of. The escapee was still out there, but so was this mysterious boy. And something told him their paths were destined to cross again. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the challenges ahead. Kigo, he thought to himself, you've got work to do. Izuku entered the sweet shop, his eyes scanning the colorful display of treats and the few patrons scattered around the cozy interior. He looked around until he saw someone familiar. His grin widened, his white hair catching the light and his glowing blue eyes twinkling with mischief. He approached her table confidently. Yo. Tenjin-sama. Long time no see. The petite woman with light hair looked up from her laptop, her expression a mix of surprise and amusement. Satoru Gojo, she acknowledged, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. Izuku sat down across from her, waving a hand dismissively. Don't call me by that name. I am Kinda in a disguise. Of course you are, she sighed, closing her laptop. Is that Star and Stripe limited edition sunglasses? He tilted them, you bet. So, she began as he sat down. Tell me about this rebirth of yours. Well, he began sheepishly, scratching the back of his head. You know, Tanada-kun pretty much foresaw everything. He must have told you. Yeah, Tenjin said with a roll of her eyes. Your nephew is now your ancestor. How amusing. Bruh, no big deal, Izuku said with a casual shrug. How have you been? Okay, she replied. Her eyes took on a faraway look as she recalled the centuries that had passed. Spent the last 400 years doing various things to pass the time. I explored the world, learned countless languages, dabbled in different professions, and even took up painting and sculpting. I've written books, both fiction and non-fiction, and mentored a few promising individuals along the way. I've seen civilizations rise and fall, technologies evolve, and cultures transform. Whoa, so much for immortality curse technique, Izuku remarked, impressed. No kiddin', she said, her tone laced with a hint of irony. So, what do you want? Are there any jujutsu sorcerers out there? He asked, leaning forward with interest. No, she replied simply. Oh, Izuku said, slightly disappointed. And the Gojo inheritance? You can access it, Tenjin confirmed, her gaze steady. So? Say, Izuku, she interrupted, leaning closer with a curious glint in her eye. Why have you joined UA? Izuku smiled, his eyes softening. Family is important and one should always look after them. She quirked an eyebrow but said nothing. Instead, she leaned back in her chair and studied him for a moment. Want some midnight ice cream? My treat. Oh yeah, Tenjin-sama. Izuku exclaimed, his grin returning. He leaned back, relaxing into the chair as the weight of his rebirth and the future ahead seemed to lighten, if only for a moment. Tenjin called over a waiter and ordered the ice cream, a small smile playing on her lips as she did. As they waited, Tenjin looked at him thoughtfully. "So, what's your plan, Izuku? Beyond UA High, I mean." Izuku shrugged, his expression turning serious for a moment. "I want to make a difference. To use my powers for good. To protect those who can't protect themselves. It's what I was born to do. And now, it's what I've been reborn to do." Tenjin nodded slowly. "You always were a bit of a hero, even back then. Just be careful. The world has changed, and not all of it for the better." "I know," Izuku said softly. "But I have to try. It's in my blood." Their conversation paused as the waiter returned with 2 bowls of midnight ice cream. Izuku dug in eagerly, savoring the rich dark flavor. Tenjin watched him with a fond smile, her own spoon moving more slowly. "Here's to new beginnings," she said, raising her spoon in a toast. Izuku clinked his spoon against hers. "To family and to the future," he agreed. They both took a bite, the ice cream cold and sweet on their tongues. For a moment, the centuries between them melted away, leaving just 2 old friends enjoying a simple pleasure in a world full of possibilities. This video end here. If you like the story, then please do subscribe our channel. We are so close to hitting 1000 subscribers. See you all in the next video.